여러분 반갑습니다. 한 EU
Welcome everyone to the Korea EU Ecodesign Cooperation Forum.
your MC at this auspicious event hosted by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy of the Republic of Korea and the Delegation of the European Union to Korea and co-organized by the Korea Institute of Industrial Technology and the EU-Korea Green Partnership. Thank you very much once again for your all support. And due to our time limitations, please allow me to speak only in Korean. Thank you very much once again for your understanding. So to our overseas participants, please use your receivers. Channel 2 is for English. Thank you.
As you're all aware, this event is hosted by Ministry of Trade, Industry, Energy and EU, Delegation of the Republic of Korea. It's co-organized by the KITECH and EU-Korea Green Partnership. And today we are going to talk about the DPP and bilateral discussions with EU and Korea. And these are the key programs as part of this event. Thank you all, everyone, to put this event together. So let us now begin this forum. First of all, let us now welcome Ambassador Maria Castillo Fernandez of the EU to the Republic of Korea. Please welcome her with a big round of applause.
Welcome, the Ambassador, Her Excellency Ms. Maria Castillo Fernandez of the European Union to the Republic of Korea.
안녕하십니까, 여러분. 죄송합니다. Sorry for being late. It's the first time I come to this part of town, and it's as always very far and a lot of traffic. Dear friends, dear President Lee, President Cho, Director Lee, I'm very happy to be here today to be able to welcome all of you to the EU-Korea Ecodesign Cooperation Forum. And it's a forum we have been working together, my delegation and MOTIE, so thank you very much for that support. And that is a testimony of the importance of eco-design in nowadays, especially when we are all moving into a more circular economic. It is important that we do this change together. We're all accustomed to take, make, and waste, the more linear economy. Now we are going to a more reduce, reuse, recycle, and there's where the product from the very beginning, how do we design a product, is so important. Europe has been and will continue to push the green agenda. Our big European Green Deal is there to stay, and we will continue to make it a priority. In the European Green Deal, the circular economy and circular economy action plan is a key feature. I've been in Korea many years, and I've been working very closely both with business and legislators to try to push Korea towards a more circular economy, and that's why it's so important that I am here with the Korean Institute of Industrial Technology, KITECH, working together for all this push towards more circular and more sustainable and green economy. These are very important areas. We went further down into our, under the circular economy plan. We have an eco-design for sustainable products regulation, and I'm sure my colleague Pierre-Henri is here. He came from Brussels today to show you what does that mean and how are we going to do it, and hopefully that will trigger more interest in Korea, but also possibility for more exchanges. This is a very holistic framework that we have put together, but we cannot do it alone. So we need very much trusted partners. We need Korea at our side to work together to make this happen. Many years ago, we signed the EU-Korea FTA, Free Trade Agreement, and many of you which are in business have benefited a lot from the Korea FTA. And that was one of the first free trade agreements which included a very robust commitment to sustainability. And after that, many other FTAs with Taishan and other partners have continued that chapter on sustainable green policies. And that is one of the frameworks we use with MOTIE to work on circular economy. In addition, 2 years ago, we managed to implement what we call the EU-Korea Green Partnership, and that's why you are all here today. It's part of our Green Partnership and the Green Partnership program that helps a series of actions that we develop under this program. This is the green agenda at the desk of EU-Korea relations, very important at the heart. And it's complementary with innovation and research, because for you, eco-designers, it's key to put a lot of innovation and research into what we do. And Korea is now a member of an associated country of our big research and innovation program, the Horizon Europe. This is 95 billion euros for 7 years. When it finishes, there will be more money and more years to come. So that association will be there, and it's very important because new circular business models and improving product design is at the heart of our research and innovation. So there will be calls for joint projects under this association agreement. So please don't forget to watch this, to follow it very carefully, because solutions to circular and climate resilient economy, like the ones you are proposing here today, will be important in this joint endeavor. So hope we could see a little bit more of joint collaboration between European and Korean institutes under the Horizon Europe framework. We are here to help in case you need more information. But all in all, very happy to be here at the end of my mandate. I'm finishing in 2 months, so very happy to have been able to see at least eco-design and circular economy, which had been at the very heart of what I did 5 years ago when I came, still very, very high on the agenda. So thank you very much to MOTIE, to KITECH, to our Green Partnership Program, and to Henry for having been from Europe to show you a little bit more of what Europe does, what's Europe framework, and how we can cooperate together. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much to organize this wonderful and meaningful eco-design forum, and also deliver us the significance of the forum. Thank you very much once again. 이 포럼의 또 의미와
Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and thank you for the opening remarks once again. Now we will have the welcome remark from Dr. Lee Sang-mok of the Korea Institute of Industrial Technology. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
네, 여러분
Good afternoon. I am Sang-mok Lee, President of Korea Institute of Industrial Technology. It is a great pleasure to welcome you all to Korea EU Ecodesign Forum, especially in the presence of Ambassador Fernandez of the EU Delegation to Korea and Mr. Pierre Henry, Deputy Head of Unit at the European Commission. This is our first forum which is being held as part of this festival. So we want to have a very a successful forum today. I would like to also take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to Ministry of Trade, Industry, Energy of Korea, EU Delegation to Korea, and special thanks to EU-Korea Green Partnership Program for organizing today's event. Also, Mr. Cho Young-jun, head of Sustainable Management Center at the Korean Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and we have many experts and representatives from the embassies of Belgium, Sweden, Finland, Latvia, and Greece, and all other participating organizations and stakeholders here today. Starting this year with the full implementation of the EU's Ecodesign for Sustainable Products Regulation, the scope of Ecodesign requirements, which had been previously focused primarily on electronic products, is now expected to expand to virtually all product categories. As the main implementing agency of the Korean government's Ecodesign strategy, the Korea Institute of Industrial Technology is committed to developing and promoting core technologies in the fields of eco-design and digital product passports, while working to build a robust ecosystem. In this regard, I believe this is a critical time when closer cooperation with the EU is more necessary than ever to ensure alignment with the standards adopted by the EU. This is precisely why today's Korea-EU Ecodesign Forum, where experts from industry, academia, research institutes, and government from both Korea and EU have gathered to hold such a special significance. I sincerely hope this forum will serve as a meaningful platform for practical cooperation and turning point in shaping the future of circular economy. Thank you once again. Thank you so much. Thank you, President Lee, for your welcome remarks and for the significant message that you have delivered today. Once again, thank you, President Lee of KITECH. Lastly, we also have congratulatory remarks which will be delivered by Executive Director Young-jun Cho of the Sustainable Management Institution at the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Good afternoon. I'm Young-jun Jo, Executive Director of the Center for Sustainable Management at the KECCI. First of all, I'd like to extend my sincere congratulations on the successful hosting of the Korea-EU Ecodesign Forum. I'd like to express my gratitude to Her Excellency Maria Castilla Fernandez, Ambassador of the EU to EU, and Dr. Sang-mok Lee, and President of the KITECH. And my special thanks goes to the Pierre Ang Lee, Deputy Head of the Unit of the DG Environment. And also, I'd like to thank Mr. Lee from the KITECH. As we stand at a crucial juncture ahead of the full implementation of the EU Ecodesign and ESPR and DPP, I find today's gathering especially significant and timely. I believe that we stand at a critical turning point towards a more sustainable future. Although we are seeing some shifts in the global ESG landscape with the potential second Trump administration in the US and the EU omnibus packaging emerging, sustainability remains a consistent and non-negotiable theme in our globally connected supply chains. The climate crisis, resource depletion, and growing waste are no longer distant threats. They are pressing realities already confronting the industries and society around the world. In response, the EU has introduced a new framework that enables durability, repairability, and recyclability into the very design phase of products. In particular, the ESPR, which lies at the heart of EU's net zero and circular economy goals, poses a major challenge and opportunity for Korean companies and industries that have long relied on manufacturing export as engine of the growth. In this context, EU's Ecodesign regulation is not simply a policy revision, but it represents the beginning of the fundamental transformation in our industrial structure. So we should turn this one into a crisis. Korea, with its proven technological capabilities and innovative driven, we must seize this regulation not as a crisis, but a catalyst for the opportunity. So eco-friendly design, the use of sustainable materials, and reducing environmental impacts across all the product life cycle are no longer optional. They are essential ingredients of future competitiveness. The Korean government's newly launched sustainability policy also includes key measures aligned with eco-design, which will provide robust support for green industrial transformation transformation. The path towards sustainable product is not one that we can walk alone. So when we walk together, we can go further. I sincerely hope that today's forum serves as a starting point for meaningful discussions and enduring collaboration, and that it can contribute to the development of a Korean-style eco-design strategy tailored to our context. And KCCI will also do our part going forward. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words, Mr. Cho, the president of Sustainable Management Center from KCCI. Before we begin in our discussion in earnest, I suggest that we have this group photo. So I would like to. So please, 5 distinguished guests, please come forward.
연구원 이상목
Mr.
그리고 대한상공회의소 지속가능 경영원의 조용주 원장님.
So Ambassador and Mr. Lee, Mr. Cho, and 2 speakers, please come forward. And Birang Lee and Lee Sang-pil, director from the MOTIE, please come forward. We will have a group photo session. We will have another round of group photo. Thank you for your patience.
Photograph 2 times. So first of all, we'd like to have 5 distinguished guests to take a commemorative photograph. So let's take a photo, face to the camera, show us a big smile for the successful forum. Let's take a photo. 3, 2, 1. Yes, it looks a little bit tense. So we'll take a photo one more time as we upload. Oh, yes, you like a little heart. So would you please make a little heart? Thank you very much. This is the kind of symbol of Korea these days. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. So would you please stay for a while? We'll take a photo one more time. We'll invite all speakers. 그리고 발제해 주실 분들, 스피커 여러분들, 패널 여러분들 모두 무대로 모시겠습니다. 오늘 한국생산기술연구원의 신호정 실장님 and coordinator Seoul Long-han and also managing director Jens Kaiko 그리고 한국환경연구원의 조지혜 선임연구위원님까지 함께 앞쪽으로 나와주시기 바랍니다. We'll invite all our panelists and the overseas guests as well and our honorable speakers. So please come up to the stage to take a photo. Thank you. So for the best photo, would you please a little bit squeeze? Thank you so much for your cooperation. 네, 조금만 가까이 함께 사진 찍겠습니다. You might be ready to take a photo. So look at the camera, show us a big smile for the bright future. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Is there another pose you would like to? Maria Fernandez. Little heart? Yes, thank you. Applause? 예, 박수 치면서 한번 찍겠습니다. We'll take a photo one more time as we applaud. Applaud to celebrate the opening. Look at the camera, please. 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much. Thank you. We'd like to invite your sets back. Please return your set. Thank you. 고맙습니다. 자리로 천천히 모시겠습니다. 그리고 기다려주신 우리 참석자 여러분들께도 진심으로 감사 인사드리겠습니다. 이렇게 첫 걸음을 뗍니다. 앞으로 다양한 정보를
It was a wonderful opportunity to open and commemorate the first Korea EU Ecodesign Forum. Thank you so much for joining us and stay with us until the very end. We will proceed with presentation as soon as we are ready. The first presentation is about the key elements of the EU ESPR working plan. Mr. Henry will deliver the presentation on the topic. Mr. Henry, Deputy Head of Unit for Sustainable Product at the European Commission, please welcome him with a big round of applause.
European Commission with a big hand.
Good. Thank you,
very much for organizing this forum and for inviting me to present the ESPR working plan. So, indeed, ESPR is a recent legislation. It has been adopted last year, but it is also the result of a longer legislative history with Ecodesign. So first, why there is such a policy framework in place? And I'm sure the figures that you see on this slide won't surprise you. You know already most of them. It is mainly related because of to the resources issue, to the constant increase in the extraction and processing of resources, and the impact of this processing and extraction on the environment and on greenhouse gases emissions. Currently, only 12% of materials used in products come from recycled material in the EU, and we see that this is not at all sufficient to address this issue of resources depletion and consequences. One way to improve on it is precisely to work on products. As you know, up to 80% of the environmental impacts of products are determined by design choices. This means that the solution also can come largely from the design of these products. So from the integration in the life cycle of the product of all the solutions to minimize their impact, but also on information. And this is a new focus of environmental policies to have this focus on the information needed by consumers and by other businesses to make informed choices and optimize the life cycle of products. So precisely this new framework adopted last year broadened the scope of the previous Ecodesign directive, broadened the scope beyond energy-related products, but also in terms of requirement, the type of requirement that can be set on product. It is enlarged to further circularity issues, to the environmental footprint and carbon footprint, to recycled content and substances of concern present in the product. The new framework enables also to have a larger approach by using horizontal requirements, so requirements on a larger number of products on specific aspects, and this focus on information that I introduced already. And the main way this focus is materialized is through the digital product passport that was mentioned already in the introductions, and which is indeed a major innovation in this field. So how will it work? The legislation that was adopted last year is a framework legislation, so setting the main rules, the main processes, the context, but the product-specific rules will come later on through secondary legislation, so what we call delegated act in the European jargon. And one important step between the two is the working plan, announcing in advance the product on which we will work, and therefore the product that will be regulated in future. And the first of this working plan has been adopted in April this year, and this is what I will present now. After having recalled the product aspects covered under ESPR, and you see that there are plenty of aspects that we need to take into account to look, to assess in the product before regulating them. Some are directly related to circularity issues when it comes to repairability, to durability of products, to their upgradability. Some relate to environmental impact more largely when it comes to the environmental footprint, but also the water use, water efficiency, the energy efficiency of product. And some relate to the end of life of product with the possibility of recycling, but also the recovery of materials and remanufacturing of products. The type of requirements that can be set on products, so both performance requirements, which are minimum requirements that the product needs to meet in order to be placed on the EU market. And we have a long list of possible performance requirements and information requirements, so information provided together with the product on sustainability aspects, on the way the product can be repaired, can be recycled, and this is integrated in the digital product passport or possibly on physical labels coming with the product on the place of sale. What is the implementation process that will follow? So the first working plan was adopted in April. We have started, and we're starting what we call preparatory studies, so long studies on specific product or larger scope of product, looking at all the aspects to be regulated in product, and what are the best requirements possible, the most appropriate for a given product, considering also the market situation, for example, of the product. And this comes with a wide consultation of stakeholders. So industry stakeholders, for example, are involved right from the beginning of the studies. They can participate. They give their input in terms of assessment of the product, of what is feasible to regulate them. And at the end of the process, it is discussed in what we call an Ecodesign forum, gathering all these stakeholders and drawing the main conclusions of this study in view of regulation. Once a measure is adopted by the Commission, it includes a time for implementation, so duration is ensured so that industry can adapt, can make the necessary investment and prepare for the actual implementation of these measures. So in this working plan that was adopted in April, you'll find final products, consumer products, or products that are ready to be used. And this includes textile, with a focus on apparel for this first working plan. You find also furniture, tires, and mattresses. So these are the four final products that were added in this working plan. But you find also intermediate products. So iron and steel products which are provided to industry to be incorporated in final product can be regulated as such, and aluminium is the second one. Then you have still the energy-related products, so all the products that were covered under the old Ecodesign directive remain covered in the new legislation and will be reviewed and the requirement regularly updated in the new legislation. So I won't read all the list, but I'm sure you're familiar with the product that's already regulated. And you see that we have for each product a timeline, so indicating when the study takes place and when we plan for the adoption of measures. So this is the end of the list. And to mention also that we have a number of products which are in what we call a transition regime, so which follow the rules of the old Ecodesign directive, before switching to the new regulation. We have also horizontal measures in this working plan, so measures covering a wider scope of product, but focusing on a specific aspect. And we have two of these measures that will be prepared. One on the repairability of product, and that includes the repairability scoring that we have started implementing on smartphone and tablets, for example, in a recent implementing measure. And the second one is on the recycled content and recyclability of electrical and electronic equipment. And I'm pleased to see in this forum a number of solutions precisely working on the recycled content and the recyclability of products. So I think there are a promising ground for future progresses in this field. A short mention of the substances of concern, which is also a new element in ESPR, with a definition that refers to chemical legislation, being REACH or the labeling classification regulation. So a number of substances identified in this regulation have to be tracked under ESPR. So we will ask manufacturers to report on which substances are in the product and where they are located, if there are specific instructions for handling them, especially at the end of life, for example. And finally, and very importantly, the international aspects. As these rules, the Ecodesign rules are applicable to all products placed on the EU market, whether they are manufactured in the EU or imported, which means that they will apply indeed to your product when they are placed on the EU market. And this is why the consultation of stakeholders is also open to international actors, and we have a number of representatives of industries, non-EU industries involved on the EU market, which contribute to this legislation and which allows the rules to be applicable widely. At the end of the process, we also have a more formal consultation of the World Trade Organization using the procedure on barriers to trade, so as to be sure that the rules are compatible with the WTO rules. So I would invite everyone interested to follow the preparatory work on these different products, to contribute in the best possible way, so as to be able to implement it in the best way in future. Thank you for your listening, and I'm happy to participate in the debate later on.
Thank you very much. Meaningful presentation for us, especially the Korean participants. Thank you very much once again. 고맙습니다. 아마 EU가
because EU is a big export partner to Korea. We have many export destinations there. So we have a panel discussion at the end of today's forum, so please look forward to that session as well. Now, I would like to move on to the next presentation. The topic is policies and systems to promote the industrial transition to a circular economy. Let's welcome Deputy Director Sang-pil Lee of Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy.
Hello everyone, nice to meet you. 안녕하세요.
Good afternoon. I am Sang-pil Lee, Deputy Director at MOTIE from the Industrial Environment Division. EU is leading the circular economy transition, so it's very significant. Or I'm very grateful for to be participant to this great forum, and I'm very excited to share our Korea's policies and schemes for industrial circular economy transition. I will briefly go over the Industrial Environment Division and also our policies and key achievements. We have more in-depth presentations after my presentation, so I'll deliver a very high level. So first of all, I would like to introduce the Industrial Environment Division, move on to circular economy policies, achievements, and our future direction. Let me first introduce the Industrial Environment Division. Industrial Environment Division is a team in MOTIE. We are developing implementation policies for industrial CE transition and carbon neutrality. And we are also responding to environmental regulations, supporting businesses in adopting circular practices. What we do is to work on the legal framework for the eco-friendly industrial structure or industrial remanufacturing plants and some of the critical raw material plants as well. From 2019, EU announced the EU Green Deal and then announced the work plan for circular economy. In 2020, also, Korea announced its version of the Green New Deal, specifying the establishment of the circular economy and ecosystems and infrastructure. So since 2020, we are working on customized policies for different structure. In the beginning, our focus was mainly on reducing waste. From 2020, our focus moved on to transition to a circular economy because that transition can work as a means to further grow the economy. So we are trying to build a foundation for the circular economy. These are the key circular economy policies. In 2023, we announced the growth strategy. CE9 project is what we announced in 2023. And in 2024, MOTIE announced carbon neutral supply chain strategy. And supply chain data platform for DPP and CBAM compliance and support for carbon footprint calculation is stipulated in the strategy. So this supply chain data platform, like Katana in EU, it's a data space-based infrastructure to protect Korean businesses' data and also a safe platform to exchange data when needed. And this year in July, working together with other ministries, we announced a policy plan for fostering the used battery industry. It's a new comprehensive law for the circular economy of used battery systems that was introduced. Moving on. In June 2023, when the growth strategy was announced, we announced CE9 project. Let me go over this. CE9 project contains 9 strategies for 9 different industries: petrochemicals, steel, non-ferrous metals, batteries, electronics, textiles, motors, machinery, and cement. So it's 9 projects for 9 different industries. I think so. I will just touch upon textiles, batteries, and electronics, which is related to the theme of this forum. We are going to build the foundation for the battery reuse. To promote the reuse of the businesses, a reusable battery safety inspection system will be established soon. And also for this, we have a platform for the history of the used batteries. And also, we are going to expand the centers for large-scale demo and commercialization of support for reuse. We also promote the use of renewable raw materials for key battery materials, and we are using public procurement to drive demand for renewable materials. Moving on to electronics and textiles. Eco-design management is our priority here. Eco-design efforts will be supported to create new competitive advantages, and Ecodesign grade system is what we are working on now. I will focus more on this and resource efficiency grading in the latter part of my presentation. We support the eco-design efforts to create new competitive advantages, and we also expand infrastructure for eco-design and workforce training. And let me touch upon remanufacturing. Remanufacturing is an industrial process restoring used products to original or better condition via full teardown and rebuild. So it is an effort to change the performance of the parts to the original condition. So MOTIE started its effort in 2005, and in 7 years, we were able to achieve a great growth in this aspect. Toner, printer cartridges and auto parts were the items that we focused on in the beginning. Now moving on to construction, industrial, and E&E equipment. In the future, semiconductor and high cutting-edge technologies will be our focus. Korea, for the first time, established a remanufacturing quality certification system. It's a certification system to raise awareness of the quality of the remanufactured products. It ensures quality and performance and encourages trusted production and consumption. Because we guarantee the quality of a remanufactured product, thereby encouraging remanufacturing itself and encourage build demand for these kind of products. Let me talk about resource recovery. Resource recovery is to disassemble batteries or use electronics to find rare materials, rare metals, and also use waste like scrapped cars and discarded phones to use it again. In 2008, Korean government announced low carbon green growth policy, so the focus at that time was on electronics, and resource recovery R&D is supported. So the critical metals and waste plastics and metal recovery were our focus, so the government invested more than 90 billion Korean won. This is the examples of successful resource recovery projects. Seoul KITECH is a domestic company in Korea. They, for the first time in Korea, commercialized to recover 6 key metals from spent batteries. Now they have 6 pre-processing sites in US and Hungary. Moving on to EIP, Eco Industrial Park. Eco Industrial Park is based on the relevant act. So when byproducts, waste and waste energies come from conventional manufacturing cluster, we use that. So we enhance the resource efficiency and reduce emission, so thereby optimizing the manufacturing clusters. So those byproducts and waste were discarded in the linear economy, but in the circular economy, now we reuse the byproducts and waste by cooperating with other industries and sectors. The EIP, we began this program in 2005 in 3 different stages: R&D and deployment, or first and second steps, and now we aim to establish a Korean EIP model, and now we focus more on high efficiency equipment. Now let me move on to the policy direction for the future. First of all, Ecodesign is a resource efficiency rating system. Resource efficiency rating system benchmark the EU's Ecodesign scheme. So durability, repairability, recyclability, remanufacturability will be evaluated and assign ratings to provide consumers with transparent information. And also the businesses will be able to build competitive advantage over this. They will be able to export more and will be encouraged to use more of the recycled and reused resources. And this is the progress of the system implementation. MOTIE from 2003 began a pilot project. Cell phones, and cordless vacuum cleaners was the subject of this project. So we have developed some of the systems and ratings for these products. So we plan to work on the legislative aspect of this, and in the mid to long term, resource efficiency rating system will be expanded for mutual recognition. Example, like in EU with other countries, we will pursue mutual recognition. And as I have said, pilot project will also include new products groups like dishwasher and robot vacuum, and we will work on the legislation, build the legal basis for resource efficiency rating, and work on standardization after that. Next is certification of the recycled contents. Certification system that verifies and use content ratio, so we will be able to verify the content ratio of the recycled materials. For Korean companies to export, they have to comply with the local regulation, like ISCC, GRS are the examples. These are civil certifications which is mandatory for export. So Korean businesses, it's a burden for them to be certified in many different aspects. So, and at the same time, when they're certified overseas, the trade secrets or business secrets could be leaked. Therefore, for the sovereignty of the Korean business data, to protect them and also help them to be certified, this is our goal. And from 2003, plastic batteries and textiles are subject to our pilot project of certification of the recycled contents. So we will work on a legislation in the future to support the Korean companies. In the mid to long term, we will pursue mutual recognition with our trade partners like EU and the US. For certification of recycled contents, we need to cooperate with the EU. So once the Korean recycled material certification is acquired by a company, will it be suffice for the EU compliance? We need to work on this with the EU counterparts. And for K-certified recycled products to be subject to EU green procurement priority, we also want to work with EU on these aspects. Lastly, my last page is about directions for industrial circularity enhancement. Circular economy effort is not just for domestic purposes. We have to go beyond the global compliance. We have two issues to tackle. First is high quality recycled materials. It is key to global industrial competitiveness. And we have to let the Korean companies to grow the secondary materials industry. The next is Ecodesign. It'll be a key to sustainability under stricter carbon resource rules. So we will build phased Ecodesign support hub to lead global standards and unlock new markets. Thank you so much for your attention. And through this forum and through the festival, I hope that Korea and EU could cooperate more on circular economy transition. Thank you so much.
고맙습니다. 에코디자인 규정 실행
Thank you so much, Mr. Lee, sharing Korean government's plans, strategies, and future directions for circular economy transition. Once again, thank you, Mr. Sang-pil Lee from MOTIE, for your presentation. So before we move on to the next presentation, we will have a 10-minute coffee break. We have coffee and refreshments outside. Please enjoy them, and we'll see you back in the hall in 10 minutes. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking your seats. We move on to the third presentation. The next presentation is about digital product passport, the ecosystems to enable DPPs. we have Shortrongen. He is from TNO and he is the Digital Product Passport Coordinator. Please give him a big round of applause.
Round of applause. 박수로 여러분 환영해 주시기 바랍니다.
All right, and there are my slides. Fantastic. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for having me. Thanks also for the organizers of this this event. Oh, all right, thank you. It's, let's try. I hope that works and everybody can hear me all right. All right, perfect. So as mentioned, my name is Sjoerd Ronge. I'm from the Netherlands. And if the clicker works, there we go. The Netherlands is that small red country in northwestern Europe over there. I work specifically for the Dutch Research Institute called TNO. TNO is a partially government-funded non-profit research institute all over the Netherlands with about 4,000 employees. And within the institute, I coordinate our research into digital product passports across various domains, but for me personally, with a background in IT. So that's something you maybe see coming through a little bit in the presentation. Worth mentioning, TNO recently also opened an office here in South Korea, but that's very recent, so it's not yet on the map there. All right. Continuing a little bit with the type of work TNO does, because it will be relevant later as well. As I mentioned, large institute, lots of different domains we work on, but most relevant today is our work on digitization, IT, and sustainability, because those two intersect when it comes to product passports and the ESPR, for example. And we tend to do that in all sorts of collaborations between academia, so universities, public partners, and then private companies. So we try to set up these networks for research and implementation of new innovations. For me personally, that work usually is around the topic of sustainability, not just the ecological sustainability that is so prevalent in the ESPR and in the earlier presentation by the Commission, by Pierre, also in the sense of economic and social sustainability. Mainly because if we have something that adds value to companies, these companies will actually thrive and survive in our sort of competitive landscape. So if we do something that makes a company more ecologically sustainable as well as increases their earning power, we'll have long-lasting ecological sustainability or social sustainability, of course. Right. Those terms can be a little bit vague, so I have some examples here. With economic sustainability, as I mentioned, being usually revolving around earning power of companies, but increasingly also about our strategic autonomy and ability to keep our companies going when, for example, a ship gets stuck sideways in the Suez Canal and imports to Europe get slowed, or other geopolitical events that may happen, of course, that sort of highlight our dependency on, for example, critical raw materials, which is this table here. This is a table from the European Commission that they put together on resources Europe is very dependent on for importing. Ecologic sustainability, not one that needs a lot of explaining today, I think. The picture here is from Earth Overshoot Day. Basically just highlights we need about twice the amount of resources and place to put our mess that we're leaving behind if we want to keep going. Obviously, we don't have 2 planets, so we'll need to about half of our research usage, which is in line, I think, with what was mentioned earlier as the driving forces behind the ESPR. And then finally, there we go. When it comes to social sustainability, one quite often not discussed as much, but still to me quite important personally, deals with all sorts of labor conditions, right? So the example here is from a Dutch chocolate brand, Tony Chocolonely. They claim, at least in their yearly report, that in Ivory Coast, a coca farmer gets paid about half of a livable minimum wage on average. So room for improvement there in fair working conditions as well. So in my mind, given that we are currently reliant on all these critical raw materials that we're not recycling, we are using too many resources and not recycling our waste efficiently, and we're not paying people a fair living wage in general for a lot of domains. We have some work to do when it comes to sustainability, right? But what do we need to do exactly? That's the big question. And for me, answering that question starts with improving traceability, right? So if we don't really know how our value chains are set up and what's happening and where our products come from, how they're made, and what can still be done with them, it's very difficult to improve these sustainability topics in a sort of efficient manner, right? And for the traceability, of course, we get to the digital product passport, which to me is the system that will enable this traceability. So we want to be able to keep track of a wide range of attributes, of a wide range of products, so we can do all sorts of analysis, both the things that we need to do for legislation, as well as the things we can do beyond legislation that adds value to companies, because that's most likely where the added value will be for organizations. But of course, within a set of constraints, as was mentioned earlier, we do not want our intellectual property to become public, for example. We do want to stay in control of our own data. So this is quite a complicated challenge, right? We want to share a lot about a lot of products with a lot of partners, but still maintain control over our data and our value chain. All right. Now, fortunately, this leap, if you will, from sustainability to traceability, and then, of course, also the circular economy aspect that I haven't made explicitly here, but is sort of in here as well. That leap of why we need digital product passports has been made by policymakers as well, and all sorts of legislation. It has been drafted or is being drafted right now. ESPR has been presented before, but there's also, for example, battery regulation that I think quite a lot of organizations here are familiar with. I saw a nice demo earlier on in the trade floor there about a battery passport. There's legislation for construction, what have you, right? So we get all these different domains and legislation demanding them to provide more transparency and traceability into their value chain. Right. Now, this slide doesn't bear repeating because it's the same one you've already presented, so thank you for that. But this is coming for a lot of domains, right? And if you see the most recent communiqué on the European single market, the European Commission already in that states that they will introduce these product passports for pretty much all product categories that they are going to take a look at in the upcoming years. So when in doubt whether your company is going to be impacted by this stuff, let's assume that this stuff, right, this product passports and traceability need will impact your company. And there we go. Now, it is tempting to stay stuck in this legislative framework and just say, well, you have to do this because of policy, therefore their companies get to work. However, to me, that's not really where companies are going to get very excited, right? They're probably going to want to work on something that adds value, that makes them money effectively, and not on just meeting another regulatory tick box. So we are actively looking within TNO and in our projects for ways that we can implement a digital product passport to enable the circular economy and at the same time create value for companies. And there's a couple of places where we see that happening. Obviously in accelerating sustainability, right? There's a big sort of room for improvement there. That's squarely in the crosshairs of the ESPR as well, of course. When it comes to resilient value chains, that's now quite an important topic as well, I've noticed. You want to be able to keep your business going when material imports cease being something you can take for granted, right? So this is effectively risk mitigation that you can do using these systems and technologies. And then finally, there's all sorts of new business models and sort of ways of creating earning power in the circular economy that for some companies will require quite a big shift in the way they're currently doing business, because you may implicitly right now rely on an infinite supply of resources and an infinite waste dump that you can use at the end of your value chain. But if you start rethinking that a little bit, there's opportunities there as well, at least we find in our research. Right. So hoping you're still sort of with me here and you're thinking now, all right, these product passports, these seem like a pretty good idea and I want to implement that. I want to get going here. I want to do something with this. There's two areas where you're probably going to be asking questions about. Right? So on the one hand of the slide here, on the right-hand side for you, it's about making the right data available. So within my company, what data do I have that should probably be shared with my value chain members in some way to enable circularity and do product passport-like things? And then secondly, well, if you're sharing with your value chain partners, you have an interaction with them, and you probably need to make agreements about that. And that's where things tend to get quite difficult, because making data available within your company that is, well, Still difficult, but it's also a bit of a standard digitalization challenge, right? It's something that companies have been doing for years. There's all these commercial consultancy firms that can help you with that. And well, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's a solved problem, if you will. However, the ecosystem agreements part, that is often overlooked and I think quite a bit more complicated, because now it's about collaborating with your competitors, with your suppliers and your customers, and finding a business model that suits everybody, right? So how do we set up this set of agreements that lead to something that's beneficial to all organizations in your ecosystem? There you have a lot of challenges about cross-sectoral collaboration, about the collaboration between big and small companies. So all the small challenges that you can sort of gloss over while you stay within your organization now become very, very major sticking points. And what we see often happening there, and what I hope we can break through, is what we've dubbed the collective action problem. For all organizations in this ecosystem, it's easy to sit back, relax, and wait for your competitor to first figure out this ecosystem collaboration, right? They can first figure out all the difficult stuff, make the investment, and then later on, you can sort of copy their homework and you can step in and still reap quite a bit of the benefits without having the cost, which for a commercial company, that is a very appealing proposition. You just, you know, have the benefits, none of the costs, your return on investment is going to be better if you step in late. Issue is everybody is doing that, so nobody takes the first step and nothing gets done. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of these ecosystems and a lot of value chains, even in countries at times. Everybody's looking at everybody else, and the real implementation work isn't being picked up anywhere. Obviously, that is a problem, right? If you are with me still from the sustainability challenges and we want to tackle that, and at the same time we're seeing people looking at each other without doing anything, we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to stay stuck on needing 2 Earths to manage our resources. Right. Then sort of making that problem even bigger is if a group of companies can get together and take that first step. So for example, you have a automotive sector somewhere, or in the Netherlands, high-tech machine manufacturing that gets together with 10 or 20 companies, and they agree this is how, as an ecosystem, we're going to collaborate. This is how we're going to make product passports work and how we're going to sort of create value for everybody, and they're going to solve all those difficult questions I mentioned earlier. Then still we're not quite there, because if all sectors or countries or value chains do this in isolation, we get here path 1, right? A bunch of silos being built that are, again, not interoperable with each other. So you may get value created within that ecosystem, which is, to be clear, better than not doing anything, right? But in a few years, you're probably going to want to connect your ecosystem to another ecosystem. And if you've not thought about how to do that, you'll be in a bit of pain, and you'll need to go through a major rework, if you're not careful, to set up this connection. So instead, what we tend to pitch in our projects is we should really keep path 2 in mind here. How can we set up interoperability between organizations and between ecosystems at large, straight from the get-go? And that is in part a technology question, but also in part a governance and organizational question, and even a legal one. But spending that effort now, I believe, is easier than trying to repair disjointed ecosystems in a few years. But it does, again, increase the complexity right now. This idea here, this part 2, in the Netherlands specifically, we've brought up to our national government, our Ministry of Economic Affairs, and they were sort of along with our thinking there, and they realized, yeah, we want interoperable ecosystems. They also recognized this problem of not having a first mover, or the collective action problem. And in the Netherlands, that led to the creation of our Center of Excellence for Digital Product Passport. So that has been in close collaboration with government, research institutes, and some private companies there as well, to highlight how we have an issue here that needs solving on a higher level than just a single organization. So we ended up at our national government. And our national government was kind enough to help us set up this coordination initiative. So that is all we do now in the Netherlands for the Center of Excellence of Digital Product Passports. We do not do any major research. We don't develop new technologies. What we try and do is make various initiatives that are already happening and technologies that are already being developed available to the various partners and the ecosystem at large. So they will all hopefully build their sectoral initiatives or their smaller initiatives based on the same technologies and the same sort of organizational agreements. So hopefully, and I mean, this is work in progress, so I don't know exactly yet, but hopefully this will lead to a situation in a few years where all these sectoral initiatives happen to be interoperable with each other, right? And if we manage at that point, it will feel very natural and like it took no effort at all. But if it feels like it took no effort at all in a few years, it's because right now we're really thinking about how to ensure that. What technologies, what standards are needed here to ensure, for example, the steel sector is going to be interoperable with the high-tech machine building sector in the Netherlands that, of course, uses a lot of steel, right? Okay, so a couple of specific things that we are focusing on in our coordination effort and in the ecosystem we are setting up on a national level. It's the cross-sectoral collaboration, as I just mentioned, right? Steel and high-tech machine building, or textiles and, well, basically any other domain where they use textiles. Those things seem to go into anything. Right, so setting up cross-sectoral collaborations there. We also want to kickstart the adoption of product passports, because to me a lot of the sort of the hard challenges have, when it comes to technology at least, have already somewhat been answered, right? There has been a lot of research going into this topic. A lot of the really fundamental challenges are things you can just sort of look up nowadays. So you could, you know, start working on your implementations and get going. Not everything is there yet. I mean, I'm sure we'll have talks later today about the European standardization work, for example, which is a few months out still before they publish something. But a lot of things are already known. So as a company, you could get started already. On the bottom here, it says support SMEs. That's another major pillar that we're trying to work on. If you're a very large OEM, you can have a whole building full of R&D people, and you have an IT department that spans multiple countries. You don't really need any help from an initiative like this, right? You have people that you can hire that look into all of this stuff. So, I mean, they can still benefit from these kinds of national coordination initiatives. It's just not really tailored for them. Whereas if you're an SME, which has a dozen or 24 employees, and your IT department consists of your CEO on his Friday night trying to figure out how to keep them emails going, you know, then you're in real need of help here. So especially those organizations we try to tailor our communication and events for in this initiative. And then finally, I mentioned technology. A lot of topics have been tackled to some extent already. The value chain agreements and how to collaborate with your competitors, for example, always is a very difficult topic, where it really helps if you have some party that can mediate and step in to help out, if you will. So we're trying to support value chains there as well, on making agreements on how to use the digital product passport and how to set up these collaborations. And hopefully, like I said, this is work in progress, right? It's not done, but we are hoping and expecting that this will overall lead to more adoption of product passports, at least in the Netherlands, right? Keep in mind, it's just a national initiative. That not only we have a bunch of product passports adopted, but they're also interoperable, and they are sort of connected in this larger ecosystem, which hopefully really helps scale up our initiatives. I think that has been my last slide already. Yeah, it has been. So thank you very much, and that's been my presentation.
Thank you for your insightful presentation. Please give him, I'd like to thank him again for that. Now we'd like to welcome Chief Leader Shin Ho-jung, and he's going to discuss Korea's industry's readiness and challenges for the implementation of DPP. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. Good afternoon. I am Shin Ho-jung from the Korea National Clean Air Production Center at the KITECH. I'm very pleased to be here, and I now also appreciate the opportunity to present today at the Korea-EU Ecodesign Forum policy session on the topic of Korea's industry readiness and challenges for the implementation of DPP. So these are the contents that I prepared. First of all, I'd like to share the global trends in the promotion of DPP. Secondly, I will introduce the Korea's government's strategies and the current preparedness or readiness for the DPP implementation. And thirdly, I will also address the key challenges and implementations required for the Korean industries in responding to DPP. Lastly, I will also then propose how Korea and EU can cooperate and suggest key topics for future discussions. First, I'll examine the EU's requirements and the current preparedness of other major countries. As many of our speakers touched upon, the ESPR and DPP, I'm sure that some of you are not familiar with ESPR and DPP. So I'd like to touch upon once again the ESPR is to have circularity and recyclability. It is to improve circularity and recyclability and durability and energy performance of products. The DPP can be understood in simple terms as a kind of digital identity card for products, components, and materials. It's like a digital ID. So these are the two key concepts, and that will help you understand better to understand this topic. So if you look at these slides, the EU's DPP requirements are highly technical and detailed. Yes, if you look at the specifically interoperability, access rights, management of data integrity and security, there are some the terms that you feel unfamiliar. But if you look at the slides, this can present a crisis, but also a opportunity for Korean industries. At the bottom of the slide, the color coding represents I'd like to touch upon this. If you look at the title, it says designed to create shared value across the supply chain. And this was highlighted and presented in 2022. When I was first started my work, and this is what I organized. If you look at that from the extraction of the resources and for all these actors in the stakeholders in the process, this is where that we can create new values. So DPP was presented in that spirit. And I have some comments for the Korean participants. If you think about the DPP, you might feel that this is something difficult regulation that we should comply with. But what we really think about is a high time for adopt DPP. Then let's look at what other companies or other nations are doing, and you can see that all other countries have the unique characteristics. The EU has a central register system or mandatory DPP rules. And you might see that this is private-led, but they seem to have a strong measures. But in contrast, in China, they have more focus on conformity assessment and custom traceability and mutual recognition. And if you look at Japan appears to be approaching DPP through voluntary guidelines issued by corporate leadership. From the perspective of SME burden reduction and the development of a national platform. So it appears to be more like a guidelines. If you look at the U.S., since there has been taken a market-led approach, they're relying on industry self-regulation. What's important here is that these differences reflect the industrial structures and characteristics of each country, and therefore we should consider how the Korea also must also recognize the global diversity in their approaches to develop in consideration of specific characteristics of our industrial supply chains and the principle of data sovereignty. And I have 3 questions. In ESPR, it can be both a challenge and a crisis. Then my first question is how can we turn compliance into advantage or opportunity? That's my first question. And my key second question is that we have so many stakeholders and the trust and efficiency and sustainability are key elements. Then how can we enable effective data sharing among stakeholders? Number 3 is considering the unique industrial and governance structure. Then what is our tailored strategy? This tailored strategy for our industrial structure for Korea. These are 3 main questions. Therefore, the EU's requirements and all the stakeholders, what kind of incentives we can give and how we can best reflect the Korean industrial structure. And these are the points that I like to discuss. And then let me turn to how Korea is responding to TPP. If you look at this presentation was disclosed by the MOTIE, Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, and there are 5 major strategies, and one of them is the TPP, creating data platform. That's the first one. And through these strategies, the strategies that we have, our focus is rather than a regulatory regime, how to promote our enterprises to have a better competitiveness. So as for the DPP platform, at the core of the Korea's data platform strategy, if you see on the right, we have Gaia X and Catena X or Uranus ecosystems. These are the systems other countries are operating to ensure interoperability. What's critical here is on the left. First, the corporate information flows. The big question is how we can ensure data sovereignty, and we have in the middle SaaS and system integration. That way we can create new industry, and how to promote industry is one area that we should work on. So I just touched upon Korea's strategies. So these Korea's strategies are not only simply a declaration. We had 3 stages. First one is the preparation. We selected 5 key industries: battery, auto, electronics, and steel, aluminum, and textile. And we will carry out the pilot test, and starting from the building stage, we'll be more specific and focusing on improvement of SaaS standards and R&D process. And lastly, in the operation stage, we are working on these verification of platform data. And if you look at the slide, if you think about DPP, my personal view is that it's not something that can be done by only one organization. It requires setting up a task force, like cross-functional and cross-ministerial effort. As presented before, this also requires international collaboration. That's equally important. Then let me now turn to more practical elements. I'd like to take 2 examples. These are the examples funded by Korean government. The first one is the DPP Data Space Guidelines. This is a preliminary study, and we have 3 stages. First of all, we start with foundational analysis for data space design. Secondly, we design advanced the component and definition for data space, defining technical elements, and lastly, we pursue optimal model design and roadmap for data space. And on the right, this is R&D task. In terms of R&D, we divide it into measuring and reporting and carbon emission reduction. In measuring stage, what's critical is to establish accurate, reliable measurement systems supporting industrial carbon management. In the reporting stage, for both domestic and overseas, we need to build interoperable data exchange infrastructure. For reporting and verification, for us, we need to reduce carbon emissions, so it has to be integrated with carbon emission efforts as well. And in this process, industry and government collaboration should be pursued in the most efficient way, and that is one way we can come up with a solution. So I just shared how we have been preparing. But of course, this is not the magic bullet. Of course not. And we do have a lot of challenges we are facing. And I'd like to touch upon 3 major challenges. First question is, we do have some barriers specific to Korean structure. If you look at these 5 major sectors, these are very complex sectors. If you look at steel, they have intermediate materials. And if you look at automotive, we have close to more than 20,000 parts. And if you think about TPP, we should respond to the not only finished products, but also intermediate products as well. And that makes me wonder, then in the steel, it's an intermediate. And if we have a QR, how about any possibilities the QR can get damaged in the process? So in each sector, there are some complexity that needs to be considered. Then how we can share data interoperability in an interoperable way, that we can exchange data across different sectors. And I think in that respect, I believe that battery, textile, and electric and electronics sessions are to be held separately, and they will have more detailed discussions. And another barrier that's specific to Korea is the cost and data sovereignty. As we conduct all these R&D efforts and work with SMEs, the invariable feedback we receive is that it's very costly. And they are very sensitive about the data because there are some confidentiality involved. So data sovereignty is one element too. Other than solving data sovereignty, we should, at the same time, if we can adopt all these regulations from other countries, that run risk of losing our data sovereignty. Therefore, I believe that just like ESG, when we submit all these data, how we can incentivize the actors or enterprises who should submit data. If you look at the solutions, what the government can do is limited. Actually, the private sector has a bigger role to play. And in terms of DPP, government and the public sector and private sector should work together. And that's the one way that we can solve these issues. Lastly, what I'd like to highlight here is that on the topic of DPP, we need to really take a balanced approach. DPP is very much focused on the technical aspect, but we shouldn't forget that many people just lose sight of the original intent behind it. DPP is to ensure data sovereignty while sharing across the entire product life cycle. And then in the process, we can create added value. However, current focus has been placed on the burden on the manufacturers. For us to implement eco-design, ultimately, this should be linked to consumer behaviors. Consumer need all the information, and the producers should have all the information, and producers should be aware of that. If you look at the fourth column, if you look at the requirement of the eco-design, the users' data can be only become available when the users consent to use of data. At the end of the day, through the eco-design, the key topic of today's event, circular economy, runs across not only producers but all other actors, consumers, and it also encompasses other elements such as circular economy. So lastly, I like to talk about how then going forward Korea and EU can cooperate and what kind of work that needs to be done. Then why Korea and EU should cooperate. My personal view is that our supply chain is interlinked. If you look at these 5 major sectors, these are the part of EU supply chain, especially the Korean economy. Korean structure economy plays a big role in that. What we need to consider is that whether ESPR or TPP, do we simply comply with this because we export products to EU? Not so, because we are deeply integrated in the process of supply chain. So this requires tight collaboration between EU and Korea. Then what needs to be discussed between 2 parties? These are the key questions, and I gave you the overview of these challenges and the preparedness. I think going forward, we should focus more on what kind of issues should be addressed and who should be involved, and how we can implement solutions in more concrete terms. The first question is exactly which areas we should collaborate. I believe that the EU also have some cost burden, just like we do have some burdens imposed on our SMEs. And that's why the joint recognition should be considered in parallel. And lastly, the message I'd like to convey is that in order for us to contribute to the discussion of this circular economy, I think this is the starting point so that it can be the spark of the global cooperation. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
고맙습니다. EU와 한국과 협력할 수 있는 방안과
Thank you, Mr. Shin, from the chief leader of the KITECH. Thank you for your very insightful presentation. Now we'd like to welcome another speaker. We have the topic is a DPP. And we have Mr. Jens Geiko from the Managing Director, Standardization Council, Industries 4 and 4.0.
of Standardization Council Institute 4.0 VDE for the next. Please welcome him with a big hand. 박수로 환영해 주십시오.
So good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present here on the standardization part for the digital product passport. Standardization have been mentioned before in the presentations, and I will touch upon this a little bit closer. First of all, let me explain a little bit what is the Standardization Council Industry 4.0 and why are we doing all this international cooperation. The STI 4.0 was established in Germany about 10 years ago. At that time, the topic Industry 4.0 came up in Germany. And we have in Germany a so-called platform, Industry 4.0, where all the societal stakeholders like ministries, like government offices, industry, trade associations, research, and even the unions are in. And they implement the basic strategy for Industry 4.0. But the basic strategy needs to be implemented, otherwise it's useless. And there are two streams for implementation in the pre-competitive area. One is via pilot projects, that's the so-called Labs Network Industry 4.0, LNI, you see on the left side of the slide, and via standardization. And standardization is done at almost all kinds. We have it on the ISO and IEC standards on the international level, but also a lot of consortia standards. And to coordinate all this, the Standardization Council Industry 4.0 was established. And our role is to guide the community how to do the standardization, how to make best use of existing standards, and how to implement the concepts in new standards, and to start the international dialogue. As you see, international dialogue is very important with the key industrial regions worldwide, of course within Europe, but also here with Korea. We have cooperation since many, many years, and I'm very happy to be here again today to present on this, and already next trips to Korea are scheduled within this year. One of the results of our work is published in the so-called Standardization Roadmap Industry 4.0. This has been published 2 years ago, and this year we have published a so-called progress report. If you're interested in that, you can read what is our plan for standardization and what is the current status of implementation. But coming now to the digital product passport and the use case for digital twin. First of all, as it has been already shown, the Ecodesign for Sustainable Product Regulation, or shortly ESPR, has been firstly published to a wider audience 3 years ago, and last year it was published. And in 2027 it should be adopted for the first products. This slide I reused from Pierre Henry. He showed earlier before. And as you see, the ESPR has mainly the two elements. One, it is a framework regulation, and on the other hand, you have the product-specific measurements. And within the framework regulation, the so-called DPP system is described. The product-specific measures, this defines which data points are necessary for the different product categories. This is the DPP data. Also, the next slide is reused or remanufactured. I added the red box to the different elements because my focus here today is on the digital product passport, which is a new tool which has been introduced within the ESPR. But it's not only the ESPR. It is already announced by the European Commission that it will be adopted to further regulations, like we have the battery regulation, toys regulation, and even more regulations, as you see on the bottom. So I use these slides from the EU Commission because they are very good prepared, and so it's, I think, the best way to show it. So as it was stated earlier, the DPP is here to stay. It's not just for one regulation. It will be a tool with a wider adoption. And it has a lot of opportunities. Coming now to the standardization part. As I said, the DPP has two main features. The one is the so-called DPP system, which describes the overall architecture for how the DPP is working. And the second one is the DPP data. So the system describes the how. And within the how, it is described what are the elements, like a registry, like a web portal, but also elements like unique identifiers, for example, QR codes, like data carriers, access rights management, and so on and so on. And these parts will be defined via standardization. And that's a link where I'm talking about the standardization part. On the right side, we see the DPP data, so the what is in the digital product passport, and this will be product specific, and it's a political decision. For example, if for this electronic device I have in my hand, you need a product carbon footprint, yes or no, or if you need the amount of recycled content, yes or no. This is a political decision. As a side remark, if the EU Commission decides we need the product carbon footprint, then I think it would be the best way to use an international standard how to calculate the product carbon footprint, because otherwise we have a regional fragmentation of the global supply chain, and that would cause a big burden on the global economy and in the end also for the consumers. showing this timeline. It shows how the regulatory work and the standardization work is synchronized. Again, we start in March 2022 when the ESPR proposal was published, and at that time the standardization community sat together and said, oh, there will be something upcoming for us and we have to be prepared. And already in end of 2023, we could establish a European technical committee called JTC 24 on the digital product passport. And we are lucky, the chair of this JTC 24, Mr. Thomas Knote, he's also here on this event, and tomorrow he will be in a session on the battery passport. Last year, the so-called EU standardization request on the DPP was published. So this is a tool we have in Europe where the EU Commission published a standardization request to make concrete description of the technical requirements on EU regulation. And as you see, we could even establish the JTC 24 before the standardization request was published. The duration of the standardization request is that all the standards need to be published by beginning of next year, so which is in about 9 months from now, so quite soon. But already in these days, in the recent days, the first drafts have been published, so there is now the phase for public inquiry on the drafts. So if you're interested on that, there is already the possibility to have now a view in these drafts and to give comments on them. So now you may think, oh, well, the Europeans make a European technical committee to develop standards. And then it will be, of course, European standards. On the one hand, that's right. On the other hand, we can say we are clearly committed to use international standards as much as possible. Therefore, I added this long arrow to say standardization work in existing TCs. So we have already a lot of existing standards on digital twin, on identification links, on QR codes, and so on and so on. And we want to reuse them as much as possible. So we are fully committed to make the DPP as much as possible relying on international standards. And these standards are developed in technical committees at ISO and IEC. And of course, Korean experts are highly welcome to join these, or they are already very active on this. And as you can see also, there's just recently an initiative to establish an international joint technical committee on digital product passport between ISO and IEC, because we think then in the next step we need also to discuss this on the international level. So we will, in the first step, see European standards, but technically mainly relying on international standard, and just make reference and to say you need to take this element from that standard, this element from that standard, and with that you can fulfill the European requirements. If you look at the scope of the digital product passport, the scope is from the ESPR regulation, the scope is on the right side of the slide where the green part is. So it starts with the point where you place a product into the market. And then it goes along the use phase, and these are strategies like repair, remanufacture, recycle, or even reuse. So this is a point in time where you need the DPP. On the left side, along the supply chain, there is no need for digital product passport according to the regulation. But I will come later to this, because here is the complexity. And that's also the challenge for the industry. Now let me talk about digital twin and what is the role of digital twin for DPP. Well, the concept of digital twin, I think it's quite well known here in Korea. It's a digital representation of a physical thing. Here, for example, an electric motor. So you have a full digital representation. This could have a functional description like simulation model, prediction of condition monitoring, prediction of wear, of maintenance, and so on, but also more or less static object information like technical specification, documentation, or some, let's say, quasi-static information like life cycle information, usage hours, or whatever. And this part can be used also for the digital product passport, at least some of that, not all of that. So we say if you have a digital twin for your product, it's a quite good preparation to provide also DPP data to fulfill regulation. One important element of the digital twin compared to the known formats or reportings we have today is the so-called machine-readable dictionaries or semantics. So in normal forms, as you have them, for example, if you want to travel from Korea to US, you have to fill out immigration form or something like that. And there you have a human readable format where it says you have to enter your name, your first name, your state, your country, whatever. And then maybe with state and country, you think about, okay, in the one I write Korea, and the other, what is the other one? So maybe you start to think, what should I fill in there? Because the semantic is not fully clear and not fully described, and you cannot translate one by one from America to other countries in the world. So this is a problem we face with today's reportings, and we want to solve this. And we want to solve this by so-called machine-readable dictionaries. They have a clearly defined semantics, clear description, and this is for humans readable, but also for machines. For machines, we have a machine-readable code. It is shown here. It's a very cryptic code. For humans, we do not need to remember this one, but the machines can directly say, oh, this is the string, this is the machine-readable identification. It's the same, so I can copy the data from one database to another one. And that is the key element to automatically provide the data for the digital product passport. So therefore, the machine-readable semantic is a key for automatic generation of digital product passport. And here, we are lucky, we have an international dictionary already, the IEC Common Data Dictionary, IEC CDD, and this is internationally standardized, machine-readable semantic dictionary. And by the way, ISO is also preparing to publish content for this one. So we have a tool in international standardization for a machine-readable dictionary, and we strongly suggest to use this as a basis to describe DPP data. Second one is, as I said, the DPP can be implemented by a digital twin. While in the German community for Industry 4.0, we developed a concept for digital twin, and it is called Asset Administration Shell. This one is standardized at an IEC standard, and this Asset Administration Shell is a very modular concept of a digital twin with a high focus on data sovereignty for the companies. And in the presentation before from Dr. Shin, he mentioned also sovereignty as a very important topic. And with this concept of the asset administration shell, we try to consider this as much as possible. Because in Europe and Germany, we have basically the same situation as in Korea. We have no hyperscalers. The hyperscalers are all located in the US or in China. Maybe the hyperscalers are so big they can establish their own proprietary system and their own semantics. But then you lose data sovereignty. So one big focus was on data sovereignty, and I think this concept fulfills this very well. It is basically a data container with different modules. These modules are shown here in green and red boxes. And the green boxes are available to the public, and the red one have restricted access. And so you can use this for the digital product passport, so some information is available to the public, like end user and customer, and some information is not available to the public that could be, for example, for market surveillance authorities or for customs. But also you can have further information which goes beyond the compliance, belong to the legal requirements. So you can have additional digital services by using the DPP. So this turns, as Dr. Shin mentioned out, we turn regulatory requirements into an opportunity. So we can use the tool of the digital product passport to offer additional digital services within one system. That is the approach of this one. So it is a possibility, and I can say that we have since many years a close cooperation with Korea, and the concept of asset administration shell is known also in Korea, at least to some companies. I see here JJ Lee sitting there, and I think he's very familiar with the concept about this, and they have some first experience on that. I showed this slide before, almost the same. I said the regulatory requirement of the digital product passport starts on the right side where you place the product in the market. But the complexity is on the left side along the supply chain. Because along the supply chain, you need to collect all the data from your suppliers, from tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and so on and so on. And so you need to exchange the data among different companies, even among the different sectors. So for example, from steel to electronics to whatever. And Well, there are two possibilities. The one is you use email and send PDF and Excel and make it by hand, which is probably very cost intensive. You need a lot of human resources to interpret the data and to fill out. You have a lot of errors and it does not scale. The other is you use a digital twin and you use a data space approach. And I saw already you are considering the data space approach for your Korean strategy, and I think this is quite good. So both we can say a digital twin is not required for the DPP, but it's strongly recommended. The same holds for data space. It's not requested by the European Commission. For the EU Commission, it's fine if you send emails with PDF and Excel, as long as you provide the DPP when you place a product in the market. But from an economic point of view, we recommend to have a strategy to implement a data space. Otherwise, it will be a big, big effort to exchange the data along the supply chain. And so with the shown concept, we can combine both. We can fulfill the regulatory requirements, but also use the opportunities of the data economy. That brings me to the summary. So we can say the EU DPP is a political concept. It's introduced by the ESPR, and it will be extended to fulfill further regulatory requirements. And also, it will be extended to further regulations. There are already approaches to have the declaration of conformity within the DPP as a tool. I think for toys regulation, it is already, the declaration of conformity is in the DPP. So if you look that, it will be extended with further elements. So that is a political concept and it's a regulation. We say the DPP should be standardized internationally, and that's what we are fully committed to say. We need international standards to implement the DPP and to meet the requirements of global supply chains. We publish now, or we are working now on European standards, but as I said, we rely, these standards are based as much as possible on international standards. I showed the concept from Industry 4.0 called DPP 4.0. So it's a combination of Industry 4.0 and Digital Product Passport. And this uses the concept of asset administration shell according to IEC 63278 series, which is the concept of a digital twin. But of course, other implementations are possible. It's not a must to use this one. But this is one possible implementation, and we think it has some advantages because you can easily extend it to data space concepts. And as I said, de facto, you need a data space to fulfill the requirements, but not from a legal point of view, but just from an economic point of view. And by using the Industry 4.0 concept, the DPP could be a good use case to start the digital transformation of your company and to start also data economy within your supply chain and with your business partners. And with that, I come to an end, and thank for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your remarkable presentation. Thank you. 고맙습니다. 이렇게 다양한 정보를 함께 나눠주셨습니다. 이엔스
Thank you so much for sharing your insights and expertise.
마지막 발제가 되겠는데요. 그럼에도 불구하고 정말
The last presentation just before the panel discussion, and so many of you are staying with us because I think there is a great need and a demand from the industry. Now, next topic is Dr. Joji He's Accelerating a Circular Economy in Korea, Policy Directions and Key Strategies.
Good afternoon. This is Joji Hye from KEI. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this session. KEI is a government-funded research agency, and we are working on specifically on this resource circulation. In Korea, we have made significant efforts to pursue a circular economy, and we have developed policy directions and key strategies. Especially last year, we enacted the Promotion Act to enable these policy directions and strategies. If you look at the Article 17 that details the circular economy, especially in this full life cycle, in terms of this product, I believe that this will be pursued further. Today, I'd like to talk about how the Korean government has worked towards this circular economy and highlight the main policy directions. Carbon neutrality has become in the center of the global aspect, and along with supply chain management and digitalization and traceability and transparency have become more important, especially the international standardization, including ISO. The circular economy has become a vital aspect that we should consider. If you look at these images, if you the more than around 45% of greenhouse gases are all related to products, which means that we should work on how to increase the resource efficiencies. And as you can see, how we design products, and that will dictate 80% of the product life cycle. So specifically, as a preventive measure, product design phase has become even more important. And that's one of our focus areas in the Korean government. And if on this slide, this shows this shift from the waste management to the circular economy. In 1986, we started a Waste Control Act, and it was mainly dealt with safe waste treatment. And then we shifted to the resource circulation, and we adopted EPR and the volume-based waste-free system. That way, these acts played an important role to increase the material of recycle. And starting from 2016, we laid legal foundations with the promotion of transition, circular economy, and society. And last year, in particular, the Act on Promotion and Transition to CE Economy and Society has been enacted. Especially, we have the legal basis represented by Article 17. The term circular economy was first used in Korea back in 2020. And in terms of implementation of a carbon neutrality, the circular economy has taken a center stage. And for us we have a Korean implementation plan was disclosed. And these provide a framework for implementing the circular economy. And at that time, we realized a need to have the Act on the circular economy. That way, we introduced the promotion of circular. This is what we call Circular Economy Society Act. And this year, the research activities are underway, starting from the 2027, and for the next 10 years, the research will continue. And starting from this month, we set up a forum in earnest. So it's very meaningful for those of you who are here today to provide your input and feedback going forward. Then let me just touch upon the Circular Economy Society Act, how this act is different from the previous legislation. The Circular Economy Society Act, it was started from the waste treatment. The scope and all the content was started from the waste treatment management. In contrast, Circular Economy Society Acts is focused on and expanded the scope. Recycled content is part of it, and all the aspects that we have discussed are part of these Economy Society Act. And diverse projects will be carried out in accordance with this act. And second, I'd like to highlight the Article 17 and 20. Article 17 specified the eco-design elements. This is a new provision. And Article 20, we ensure the provision ensures the use of the sustainable products by guaranteeing the right to repair. This shows that from the production phase, we will put the emphasis on the circular economy. And thirdly, I like to talk about the circular resources. All these are the ones, the resources that are exempt from the waste regulation. Of course, we had this recognition system in place, and as part of this new legislation, we realized that we recognize and designate some materials, and this will include scrapped material, and all the batteries, used batteries, will be covered by these designated and notified as circular resources. And we, even if there's no legal basis, and there has been some difficulties because of this lack of a legal basis, and we like to close the gap and to create a new market, we will create these regulatory sandbox system. Going forward, the eco-design framework, I believe that there are three pillars. First one is environment, second economic and social aspect. If you look at the environmental aspect, this has been highlighted more than ever. Circularity and environmental protection is important, that we need to reduce the carbon footprint while reducing and improving resource efficiency. But also this will translate into creating a new industry. So it's not only a regulation, it can also serve as a new opportunity. So it can be viewed as a new business model. This will help us create a new ecosystem. Therefore, technological innovation, as well as all our structures that are equipped to the circular economy, systemic innovation is required. And for that to happen, we need finance and all the infrastructure. All these holistic approach is required. And this is also need to be linked to consumption and consumer behaviors. We should help our consumers to have a better understanding of these consumer circular economy, and data platform is needed in that respect. In designing that, we have key barriers in various areas, and we have many challenges. I'd like to highlight these three main challenges. First one is that all the standards and methodologies differ from country to country, and all these countries have a different perspective. This can create a new trade barriers, and this can also increase the risk of greenwashing. And this will actually increase complexity and compliance costs for businesses. And this will apply to recycled content as well. Then what is exactly recycled materials, and how we certify that, and how do we calculate that? These are the questions that we should define in more concrete terms, and we should achieve the economies of scale. Then we should expand the market, and then how we secure these used materials and how we can create the demand. So there are a lot of tasks that need to be addressed. Lastly, we have barriers relating to infrastructure and technology. Like we should have advanced infrastructures to make it happen, because all these the wasted materials, we need to, it has an impact of these recycled content. So we need to improve the infrastructure in the early stages of the supply chain, and whether it's a battery, plastic, and automobiles, it should go beyond the boundaries. All the components and materials should be exchanged freely. And at the same time, international collaboration is required to strengthen competitiveness. Despite that, from the perspective of a circular economy, we need to devise key drivers and enablers. The main one is that's from these low carbon efforts, and supply chain are the part of that. And we should also come up with some traceability and methodologies and some standardization efforts. In terms of taxonomy, a lot of design related efforts need to be pursued, and there should be some integrated finance across industry and academia should be pursued. What's critical in this area is monitoring. How we should monitor the implementation progress, and if there's any obstacles, then we should address, and we should prioritize our policy efforts based on these the progress. That's why we should come up with monitoring indicators. That's why many countries are working hard on developing monitoring indicators. And starting from 2023, the Korean government has made a lot of efforts, and we have put together some guidelines, and we also established some evaluation systems, and we also have some evaluation of quality and structure for the electronics and packaging materials. Unfortunately, there has been some silos across different ministries. Since we have eco-design elements represented in our Article 17, I believe that this act will improve because this serves as a framework legislation. So based on, in accordance with this act, the circular resources or circular methodologies and the use of these methodologies and repairability and recyclabilities will all need to be considered, especially including the recycled content, how to promote the use of recycled materials. A lot of projects will be pursued, and R&D efforts will be part of it, and funding and support for export endeavor will be included. And along together, and we have we have all these resource security, a lot of elements. And we do have a separate policies in parallel, especially plastic and EV batteries. I'd like to touch upon these two product categories. In Geneva this August, we have a plastic, the 5-point event will be held, and this shows that plastic has become one of the key areas that we should pay attention. In Korea, plastic waste is one area that we should work on reducing. And as for the distribution of packaging, and we also promote the multi-use cups. And in terms of recycling, we turn our efforts to turn waste plastic into high-value raw materials. And more than anything, we are making a lot of efforts to create a related market. And we also measure and indicate how much of these recycled content are used in those products using these labels. And we all have all these guidelines set for these containers as well. To complement these MR, we also complement these chemical recycling too. All these synthetic packagings, it can be incinerated or buried. So we focus on our efforts to replace these recycled content so that they can replace the oil resources. And this will become an important area in our oil resources. Not just incineration facilities. We can also come up with ideas to turn this facility into a recycled site, and we will use pyrolysis. And some of the methodologies will be used for the oil refinery. So related revision has been revised. So we focus on to refine these oil-related resources. In terms of batteries, so far we have focused on the batteries in terms of the promoting these waste batteries, and this may whether it is remanufacturing or recycling of new used batteries, we will come up with more concrete methodologies to promote the use of used batteries. I'd like to highlight some of the key messages. We should nurture the related market, and for that to happen, we need to secure these waste resources first, like black powder and other recycled materials need to be increased. To increase that portion, we focus on 50 categories of the electric and electronic products in terms of EPR. All electric and electronic products that have batteries, the scope will be extended to cover those product categories. And technological innovation and some funding in terms of DPP, we should have life cycle tracking system in place. So in parallel, these efforts should be pursued as well. And we need to check how these batteries are created and how these batteries are discarded. So I like to highlight some of the key points in terms of nurturing the related market. We need to have a clear methodologies, especially recycled content, how we should certify. The certification system is in place in Ministry of Environment. We are working on the certification, and MOTIE is working on how to come up with the methodologies on the related certification. Especially from the infrastructure, we need to create this cluster, and the MOTIE will create this cluster facility, and they will provide some support. Whether it is recyclable or repairable, we need to assess performance. It takes a lot of time and a lot of costs, and I believe that we will complete some facility that will do the job, and that means we will have a more timely assessment than before. And especially in terms of battery design, the battery has become a very important element. And we need to come up with the standardization of the eco-design for batteries. And in terms of this eco-design, there are several criteria we need to consider, like a durability or repairability or recyclability. And then, based on what criteria, what kind of methodologies we should develop, and based on that, we can assess against these criteria. So to assess circularity, we need to come up with methodologies. Lastly, I'd like to touch upon the digital-based battery life cycle management system. Currently, we are working on the Ministry of Land and Infrastructure and Transport and MOTIE and Ministry of Environment. And Ministry of Land and Infrastructure Transport is focusing on remanufacturing, and MOTIE is working on reuse, and Ministry of Environment working on recycling. So we will continue our these concerted efforts, and for us to achieve this DPP across all these life cycle, collaboration is the key. But as you can see here in Korea, we also need to collaborate with other ministries as well. So the governance across these ministries is also important. What kind of data we should input and how we should standardize, how SMEs, what kind of support need to be given to our SMEs. All these policies across different related ministries should be strengthened. Especially last year in December, we revised the Korean taxonomy, and this will be foundation for the Korean circular economy. So I believe that these taxonomy provision will be the key part, and there will be a related investment to be made. And lastly, I'd like to touch upon the importance of international collaboration. There's we talk about frameworks and directions, and these are clear already. If you look at the eco-design, how do we assess the durability? And how do we disclose this information publicly? This international discussion is needed, so I think we should harmonize all these different standards and guidelines. In this respect, I believe this forum is a very important and meaningful event. And going forward, I believe that we continue have exchange of our ideas. That way we can strengthen our discussion and we can expand the idea of circular economy. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
고맙습니다. 오늘
Thank you. Thank you for sharing expertise and the message that is relevant to where we are right now for this the Ecodesign Forum. So that was the last presentation for today's forum. We'd like to move on to a panel discussion. So all the speakers and the panelists, we will invite them up to the stage to discuss the EU's policies, not only ESPR, but also DPP, as well as KDPP, that's a Korean DPP, and also what kind of mutual recognition can be possible. So I think that will be the topic we'll be discussing in the panel discussion session. So all the speakers, thank you so much for your presentations. And the panel discussion is open to the audience. We have a Q&A session as well. So when you can ask questions to the panelists, we have some questions prepared for them. And after that, we will open up the questions for the audience. So please ask questions if you have any. And about the EU ESPR action plan, we took a look at that, and we also took a look at the Korean government's policy directions and achievements. Moreover, we had a chance to look at the ecosystems to enable DPPs and the future response. We had some European presenters and Korean presenters about DPPs. Now we would like to welcome all these experts up to the stage. We have some questions for each of the panelists. We have them here, and we have common questions for the EU and Korean panelists. And after that, we will entertain some questions from the floor. So please look forward to that. We have speakers and the Korean speakers. Also, please, we want the Korean speakers to pick up the interpretation receiver for communication. Now let us move on to the panel discussion. Those of you who will be joining us, please come up to the stage. Mr. Pierre Angli. We have Mr. Maura Scalia.
그리고 김유겸 대표님 오늘
Yugyum Kim, the CEO of Standard and Sustainability, as well as Mr. Kim Dong-soo, Project Manager of the KDDP at 김앤장. Please come up to the stage.
고맙습니다. 이제 여러분들과 함께 한 EU 에코 디자인 포럼 정책 세션.
Let's begin our panel discussion. So we will just set the stage.
For this panel discussion, and we have many questions from the floor. So please allow me to speak just only in Korean because we will have the accurate translation because I'm not a specialist in the eco design industry. Thank you very much once again for your cooperation. 오늘 한이유 에코디자인 포럼 정책 섹션 이제 패널 토론을 진행을 하겠습니다. 제가 또 이쪽의 전문가는 아니기 때문에 통역 수신기 이용해서 하도록 하겠고요.
So we have gathered some questions. So we have some individual questions for each panelist. We have Mr. Pierre Ang Lee with us. I'm sure that there are a lot of questions for him. So first of all, before we start our panel discussion, I already introduced to him about him. Yes.
Participation before we start the panel. Please introduce yourself. I know I introduced a lot of you to our participants, but please say hello once again.
Yes, so good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Pierre-Henri from the European Commission. I'm part of the Department on Environment, but working together with the departments on industry and on energy on this legislation on eco-design for sustainable products.
Thank you very much. We'd like to pass around the microphone. 계속해서 좀 소개 좀 부탁드리겠습니다.
Good afternoon. I am Kim Dong-soo, Project Manager of KDPP Initiative at Kim & Cha. So I've been leading the research on the ESG and KDPP. That's why I am invited to this panel discussion.
Yes.
Yes, good afternoon. Mauro Scalia. I am Director of the Sustainable Businesses Department in Eurotex. We represent the whole European textile and apparel value chain, and we are engaged in the development of the Ecodesign regulation and the DPP as industry stakeholder.
Thank you very much for joining us today. 네.
Good afternoon. My name is Yugam Kim. If you go outside the exhibition, we have a booth from the Federation of Textile Industries in Korea. So we have the Standard and Sustainability Forum run by the Textile Cooperation Industry Federation of Korea. So I'm leading that standard and sustainability activities. Today, I would like to comment a little bit about the textile industry's standard and sustainability efforts. So, okay, I have some individual questions to Mr. Pierre Arny. So I would like to ask you some of the questions.
네, ES.
So we had a lot of discussion on ESPR. So when developing the delegated acts for specific product groups under the ESP, is there any formal procedure through which the Korean government or industry can submit their input or participate in technical advisory bodies?
So there are actually many ways in which consultation take place, and therefore many opportunities for Korean government and industry to provide inputs. More informal ways throughout the preparatory studies, where we have stakeholder meetings where all input and opinions are welcome, and then later on in the process, before we adopt rules, there are more formal way through the Ecodesign Forum and through the consultation of the World Trade Organization. So before adoption, where formal concerns and comments are collected.
그렇군요. 지금 그 공식적인 것뿐만 아니라 비공식적으로도
Not only official, but unofficial means exist to share our opinions. So many from the Korean government and Korean businesses could share the insights. Please, Mr. Anni, please share your insights as well. That will be very helpful for Korean participants. And the question goes to Mr. Dong-soo Kim. The EU has been preparing for the introduction of the digital product passport for quite some time, whereas the Korean government and industries are still in the early stages. So maybe in 2003. So some people believe that we lack preparation. So from your perspective as a participant to the Korean DPP project, what areas should Korean policymakers and industries prioritize most urgently? Also, what legal or institutional measures would be required to support these efforts ahead of the regulation's expected entry into force in 2027? Thank you so much for the question. Well, DPP scheme, if we rather than approaching it from the perspective of compliance, I think it could be an opportunity for Korean businesses to enhance their competitive advantage. So legislation has to take place in advance, because I have been in the past, DPP in Korea, for example, was mainly about waste, but this DPP regulation takes place in 2027. The recycled material usage will be the priority. So Fair Trade Commission early this year announced a directive clearly demonstrating the use of sharing information from the suppliers. There's an indemnity to it, so that was clearly pointed out by the Fair Trade Commission. But still, there may be some compliance issues. So there are still a lot of challenges. So we need to revise some legal framework. But I want to say, but many Korean people say, in response to DPP regulation, we are latecomer. We didn't start early enough. Yes, I believe some are correct and some are not, because, for example, the information database about SI's ecosystem, or that's, I think, one area we are very good at. Of course, we don't have much time. I think we can make efforts to catch up quickly, because we didn't start early. I agree with that, but I think we are very good at catching up. So I think we'll be able to respond to the regulation by 2027. Major sectors in Korea needs some sort of a lighthouse project for different sectors. So when there is a regulation for different sectors, we need a platform for companies to respond to that quickly enough. So EU has some good examples, some good use cases, and we saw a lot of use cases. So those could be some good reference for Korean government and the businesses to move forward with lighthouse projects for different industries. And one more thing, in Korea, many of the issues are not just for Korean market, because DPP issues is global. It goes beyond the Korean market, because we have tier 1, tier 2 suppliers not only in Korea. We have the Eastern European companies and the Southeast Asian companies. So we have to share information and data among those suppliers. So building data governance within Korea is not enough. Therefore, we need to find ways to work with partners overseas. By working with them, we have to implement a data governance, data sovereignty, and I think that's a very good start. And these kind of projects is not just for Korea, because in EU, the same challenges exist, because EU businesses, when EU requests information to a company, it's impossible to provide information from just one market. Many suppliers exist in other countries and other markets. So building an ecosystem with those suppliers is a good starting point. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. I think there are many concerns that we are behind in this endeavor, but I think he also mentioned that there are some areas that we are advanced. So we should develop the platform that's specific to each sector, and we should also work together with other countries, and that we can benchmark those countries. And if that happens, I think we can get ready before these regulations enter into force. Thank you for your comment. Now I have a question for the Mr. Skyla. So I'm sure that you're all well aware of that. Textiles are listed as the second priority after the steel in the first ESPR working plan. So is Euratex participating in the related joint research committee JRC study? If so, can you please share the general directions or focus of the study?
감사합니다. I understand the question. It's about the involvement of Euratex and the direction. Indeed.
Yes.
So absolutely, we have started from the very beginning, the preparatory steps, which took place already in 2023, because we believe this eco-design regulation, it's absolutely important. It can match sustainability with competitiveness if done in the right way. And that's a breakthrough legislation. We started to work, first of all, on the scope, because we talk a lot about textiles, but this legislation and the next act is going to focus on garments, which is not to be taken for granted, but it's a part of the whole textile value chain. And textile is very complex because, yes, there will be DPP and eco-design also on steel, on battery, but the variety that we have in the garment industry is very huge, and the complexity of this value chain, which spans across continent, it's also very huge. So we really much engage frequently with JRC, also with the Commission, DG Environment, DG Grow, also with our counterpart, COFOTI, here in Korea. And we do see how the JRC is still collecting data. They are learning a lot. They're learning the complexity of this value chain. They have not drawn conclusions yet. What we do see, however, is that all the high number of potential performance requirements and information requirements, probably they're going to focus more on some specific one. Durability, for instance, might be one of those, which is relatively easier, has already measured with international standards, which is a great asset. Same for information requirements on substances of concern, on chemicals. And we welcome that because we believe to be a successful exercise, a successful first time, the digital product passport should focus on a minimum set of information to begin with and then gradually expand. So we work very much with the policymakers, also with other players to elaborate on these points. And we're going to see probably the first insights of the direction towards the end of this year, we understand.
Thank you very much for your response. 고맙습니다. 섬유에서 의류로
Thank you. You said the scope will be expanded not from textiles to the apparels, and because it can be expanded, so it has complexity to it in order to and durability is a very important factor here. Thank you so much. Now let me move on to Mr. Yu-Gyum Kim. The first question for you is that, so I know that you have been sharing your insights and expertise in a number of seminars regarding the applicability and significance of DPP in the textile industry. So from your perspective, what are the most pressing challenges that textile companies must address in order to effectively adopt and utilize DPP? What direction do you consider taking building the system development? Well, textile industry has very complex supply chain. Acquiring data and implementing it and rendering it as a DPP, the process itself is very difficult and important. But the first challenge is for us is how the suppliers think about this issue, because DPP will bring about many changes to the textile industry. Think about the post-fast fashion, because not only in Korea, but the global textile industry was able to grow and expand because of fast fashion. And fast fashion is based on mass production. That was the paradigm that we know very well. However, fast fashion was highly successful. But once DPP comes into force, such achievement could be a minus point, negative point, because environmental regulation, the inventory and waste disposal, will be all covered under DPP. So fast fashion will find it very hard to exist in this new paradigm. Therefore, I think the industry format and the practice has to change. We have to pursue rebirth, I would say, to be in this new era. So therefore, I think suppliers will have to change how they perceive this new change. I think, secondly, according to DPP regulation, how can we acquire data and how can we collect that and render it as a DPP, data transfer, how data will be implemented. We have a lot of discussion. However, acquiring data, the level of data that we need, how to manage and how to check and verify that data. I think we don't have a lot of discussion on that. Therefore, these kind of topics should be discussed with experts. Eurotex is, I think, could be a good partner to many of the Korean companies because they could learn a lot from Eurotex as well. Thank you. So, thank you for your advice to the Korean suppliers and those in the textile industry. So, we are doing very well in terms of time management. So let's move on to the second question.
질문 드리겠습니다. ESPR
So I have a second question. The horizontal measures was mentioned as the highlights of the first ESPR working plan. Could you please explain how these measures are expected to apply across product groups and how they relate to the introduction of DPP?
Thank you. So the horizontal measures are a specific case under ESPR, so it's not the general approach for ESPR. It is applied where you have product sharing technical similarities, and in case these similarities enable the regulator to have the same parameters applying to very different products. We believe, for example, that repairability is a case where you have these similarities between products, for example, which are complex products, which use different parts, and where the durability of this product depends on the durability or robustness of these parts. And therefore, the time needed, for example, to change a part in a product, the availability of spare parts are key elements for the durability of the final product. In which case, you can ask for the information, you can require the availability of spare parts so as to ensure that the product can be repaired along its life cycle. So it's one example where the similarity of product means that you can regulate different products with the same approach, the same requirements. This won't be applied to all products, so in each case, when we adopt an act on a specific aspect, such as repairability, we will say very clearly to which product it applies, which are the parameters which are common, how they have to be calculated, presented, and this can be presented through product passport or it can be presented through other means. So that will be decided on a case-by-case for each of these acts.
네, 고맙습니다. 수평적 조치에 대한
So he just gave us the definition of horizontal measures. I believe that if our companies have a proper understanding, then that will be very helpful. Now my question turned to the Mr. Kim.
From a long-term perspective, perspective, would it be possible for Korea's DPP system to be developed towards mutual recognition with that of EU, or even towards a system which allows Korean-made products to be automatically considered compliant for export to the EU? So, from MOTIE, they said that they are pursuing mutual recognition. What are your thoughts? Rather than to respond to DPP regulation, but what we want to do is to establish a circular economy. So not only EU, but Korea, I think we both have the same need, because for Korea to be compliant to EU DPP, we need to collaborate on that. And EU side needs to be compliant to the Korean DPP, because the EU companies also need data for the suppliers in Korea as well. So it's not just about Korea and EU. I think we have to have see a bigger picture of looking at all the suppliers. So in that sense, it's not only Korea, EU, it's Korea, China, Korea, Vietnam, Indonesia, Mexico, and the US. All of the trade partners will have to accept this concept. I think that's only when we can truly achieve circular economy. So I think it's the way to go. However, how can we achieve that goal? We have several different options or steps. The first step would be, based on the Korean side guideline, based on USPR, we could build a Korean platform. We have a lot of discussions on that. So many of the presenters, Dr. Cho and Dr. Shin, shared your expertise and efforts during the presentation. So Korean side and effort will be, I think, more clear to see by the first half of next year. So I think after that we have two steps more. The mutual recognition step, just like your question. So mutual recognition would be the next step. So the coupled systems, the ecosystem could be there, but I think we have to understand what's our difference, what's our similarities, what can be recognized. I think we need to update our legislation, so that will be the mutual recognition period. And after that, the trade partners, when we agree on many aspects, I think we could reach the step of mutual authentication, moving on from recognition. We need to be able to look at the integrity of the data on both sides and have traceability and have the data sovereignty in both markets. But we also need to achieve a certain level of technological development to realize this. So if we go through these multiple steps successfully, I think all of these countries, Korea and EU as well, could achieve the true meaning of circular economy. I think, thank you so much for your comments. So it will be lessen the burden for the Korean businesses if mutual recognition and authentication can be achieved.
알고 계시겠습니다만 한국은 기능성 섬유, 친환경 섬유 분야에서 기술력을 좀 갖추고 있는 편입니다. 향후 EU 측이 한국과의 공동 기준 설정, 기술 인증, 상호 인정, 공동 파일럿 프로젝트를 통해서 협력할 수 있는 구체적인 영역이 있는지 좀 궁금합니다. 이런 질문이 들어와 있습니다. 답변 부탁드리겠습니다.
Yes, thank you. I understand the question is about in the Korea industry and high interest on high-tech and eco-friendly textile, how we can best collaborate, indeed. So the fact that Korean industry distinguishes itself for eco-friendly and high-quality products, it's good news for the Korean industry, because indeed the Ecodesign regulation aims at increase the bar of sustainability of products sold in the EU territory. So I fully agree with what my colleagues have said. If your company specializes in a business model on cheap, low-quality product, then you have to change everything. If you specialize in higher segment of product, then you're better off in terms of, you might not even have to change how your supply chain is structured, but you have to work maybe on information exchange. So that's already a good news in terms of what is your standard point, how you will comply with this legislation. Now, I heard before that Korea might have started late on DPP. but I hear the right questions are being discussed. For instance, compliance. We might have started very quickly in the EU, but we have the same question that we haven't answered yet. How do you demonstrate, for instance, that you have recycled content? That's a fundamental important question. If you don't solve this question, we cannot ask for recycled content legislation. So the discussion about the compliance check, the correctness of the information in the DPP, these are absolutely important and have to go through globally accepted standards. Once we settle these questions, and we have only a few months, I would say, to do that, then we can put the right requirements. So compliance check, it's a good point. Standard and mutual recognition of standard, these are all things we need to figure out working together, because indeed it is a global value chain. The last point on collaborative projects. Many hundreds of companies are making projects. What we now have to look at is how this project can talk to each other. That's the new frontier of the DPP projects. If a project is made by a brand with IT solution providers with only a few suppliers, this will work fine within its own network. But then when you need data on chemicals, which come from another company, another continent, that's the difficulty start. So we need to exchange information about projects, respective pilots, and see how these pilots can talk to each other. I think that offers a lot of room of collaboration.
고맙습니다. 물론 당연히
Thank you for your answer. Of course, I think we should devise ways to collaborate in more concrete terms. I think thank you for your answer. Now, my question to Mr. Kim.
That EU intends to incorporate indicators such as recyclability, durability, and repairability into DPP for textile products. What kind of research or regulatory foundation do you believe is necessary for Korean textile companies to effectively quantify and standardize? Well, I think this question is deeply related to DPP. To use DPP for products, consumer products, I think we can define DPP as this: transparency of the process, carbon neutrality, traceability of the suppliers, product safety, and waste. And all this is a collection of these information and rendered as a DPP. It's like a whole package. So textile product DPP is not a goal, it's a means. So because all of the things the performance that's taking place in the supply chain has to be quantified, collect that information, and if we share that data with the final product, that data, even though it's the same clothing, same apparel, but because of this data, I think the value of that product can be very, very different. So durability, recyclability, repairability are the basic requirements of DPP. But beyond that, what should be the future direction? What are the additional requirements that will be added to this? We have to think about that. Up until now, the apparels have a very short life cycle, and there's a changing fashion trend quickly. I think that was the growth engine behind the fashion industry and textile industries, and that was our focus until now. However, durability, recyclability, and repairability was on the opposite side of the values that we pursued in the textile and apparel industry. So how do we combine these different ideas into one? To tackle this, I think the suppliers and the fashion brands that will be responsible for DPP will have to work together from the beginning to end. They have to set goals and targets from the beginning, from the sourcing to the end. Of course, data, it's more than the data itself. I think what really matters is the value of the product and what kind of product will be made by fashion brands. They have to have a clear guideline about that and how to evaluate and measure and quantify those different indicators. one being recyclability, durability, repairability. How can suppliers supply the materials that are compliant? I think that's where we should begin the discussion. DPP is what we see. DPP is like a container for different types of data. But in the future, when DPPs come into full force, and after a certain period, we will be able to compare different DPP data. So we will then know which product is a better product, which product will bring more benefits to the consumers. We will be able to discern that. So I think we have to understand that and build a framework in that respect. When we change the supply chain based on those values, I think it will be more efficient to develop DPP for textile products. Thank you, Mr. Kim. From the supply chain to the final product, the suppliers and the fashion brands will have to cooperate to achieve that goal. Thank you once again.
모두 마무리 짓겠고요. 이제
So we conclude these individual questions. We do have some common questions. So I'll give you this question. And the first question is about the DPP. I believe that the words the DPP and ESPR can be very overwhelming for our consumers and our Korean people. So given that, is there any ways that we can introduce so that the government can prioritize some efforts so that our people can feel that these words are not too overwhelming? My question goes to Mr. Ang Lee first.
Yes, well, I think it's a question in general on how you prepare for the implementation of regulations or the implementation of changes in an industry in general. Of course, it requires planning, it requires cooperation between actors, and we heard several times that changes require better collaboration in the supply chain and the establishment of the right means of exchanging data, for example, throughout the supply chain. And I think this is the best way to prepare for such changes. Then the requirement will come and will be known progressively. But already if there is this collaboration and the means of exchanging information, I think these requirements will be integrated more easily.
Right. I agree with your opinion. 준비하고 기획하고 그리고 정말
Prepare, plan, and
되고 그리고 좀 가까워질 수 있도록 함께하는 것이.
Yes, I think we fully agree with the Ang Lee's comments. So the same question goes to Mr. Kim.
just like Mr. Ang Lee said, my opinion is very similar. But I want to emphasize one point. When we talk about DPP, so the suppliers will have to first prepare the initial data, but at the same time, in order to achieve the goal that is circular economy, and we have to talk about global compliance and data independence, interoperability, all of those are very emphasized. But however, we do not talk enough about the consumer side. The market, when market mechanism is established, the consumer's behavior has to change accordingly. So large-scale investment will have to take place for a certain period of time. If we can reduce that time, if we make efforts to change the consumer behavior in a more prompt manner, I think we'll be more efficient and we'll achieve our goal in a timely manner. Thank you. So consumer behavior has to change and we have to support that.
함께 여쭤볼까요? 같은 질문이 되겠습니다.
Same questions to my scholar.
Yes, thank you. I think from the policymakers, it's important to explain clearly how the progress to develop the DPP is happening, and they are doing this job. Because at this point, we see how some companies may even get confused, consumer get also confused what actually the DPP will be. I mean, if you go now in a shop in some cities in Europe, you will already find a QR code that you can scan and get information on the product. So people are already getting used to that. And if you speak, you're a textile company and you speak to an IT solution providers, that company might sell you what they call a DPP solution. Now, this is not the final DPP because the policymakers have not made that yet because we don't have procedures. But the word is already a buzzword, just like collaboration, right? So this creates also confusions, and especially for the small and medium-sized enterprises because they don't have the capacity to follow. So it's important to have clear communication. And then when we have the DPP contents available with the work also done by industry associations, stakeholders from Europe and from outside, this confusion will logically disappear because we have one way to communicate mandatory information. Perhaps we have also other information that can be optionally provided by business, but in the same way that we don't confuse the consumers. I mean, we already see DPP with 216 data points. Not everybody can do that. So we need to have clear communication. Where do we stand in the process? We need to do our homework as industry association, and hopefully this will be clarified in the next year. Hopefully.
네, 정책을 만들어 가시는 분들께서 굉장히 명확하게 설명을 하고 그리고
I understand that clear communication is important and we should continue to work together, and then that will help our consumers to address some confusion. So my question to Mr. Kim now.
DPP를 계속 말씀드리게 되는데
I talk about textile DPP continuously. Well, think this way. If we have textile product DPP in place, let's imagine. So all of you who are here in this hall, I think we will have 1,000 different textile DPPs just in this room. And everyone will be a DPP carrier because you will be wearing clothes that has DPP attached. When you take shower, you will because you have to use the towels, so that's also another textile DPP. So textile DPPs will be expanded. So it's something that we cannot avoid or move away from. So from as a consumer perspective, what kind of benefits can consumers enjoy from DPP implementation? You can get a lot of information, you can get a lot of data, but what kind of benefits can that generate? Of course, because we have thousands of DPPs, but consumers, I think, will not see the benefit right away. On the other hand, when DPP is implemented in the mid to long term, I think the price of the apparels is likely to increase, not just because of DPP, the data and information that will be contained in DPP, it will be clearly out there that will increase the price of the apparels. So if you buy a product with DPP, I think the benefits that consumers can enjoy will be the price. A clothes with DPP, I think, should have some sort of tax credit if possible, like EV subsidy. Think about that. If a clothes have DPP attached, the government may have to think about the ways to reduce the price. Only then the consumers will buy them. Only then fashion brands will be proactively implementing DPPs. So I think we have to think about ways to let the consumers welcome DPP. And I think direct benefit could be a price reduction. So not only in apparels and textiles, in other sectors, we have to think about what kind of benefits we can bring to the consumers. Thank you. Thank you for bringing up very important points here. So my second question is,
ESPR is considered to be now the policy, not only policy academic, but industrialization. To implement it successfully, I think we need to find ways to incentivize companies. So what do you think, what kind of policy instruments that could support or accelerate this early movement or early adoption? My question first to Mr. Ang Lee. Can you take it? Thank you.
Yes, in terms of incentives, in ESPR you have several articles dealing with incentives. One is more specifically aimed at public procurement, and that can be one way to incentivize. Or as was said for the previous question, direct incentive, direct subsidize to product themselves. But I think the main interest for consumers, and I think that the best incentive is to have more durable product and product that the consumer will enjoy using for a longer time, and for which they may save money because they don't need to buy the same product so often. So I think this should be the best incentive for consumers to go for sustainable products.
고맙습니다. 소비자
Thank you. Your answer was focused on the perspective of customers, our users. Like, and subsidy can be anything, another thing, and durability was also addressed. And my question to Mr. Kim.
대응할 수 있는 방안, 네, 유인책.
So my question is like incentive for the businesses. I think environment has to be ready. For example, if the exporting company, not just to EU but to another country, maybe should use a regulation as a condition for a contract that has to be complied with. I'm not talking about just to implement the PPs here. Our goal, ultimate goal, is circular economy. So we have to look at many different options for that. So not a short-term measure for DPPs only, but to achieve the goal of circular economy, businesses have to must be provided with platforms or measures to accept DPPs, or for example, EV subsidy is a good example, and renewable energy subsidy was a good measure to accelerate the adoption. So DPP, I don't think it should be a regulation. I think it should be regarded as support measure for the businesses, because if the companies, to help them naturally adopt DPPs, for example, through the government measures, think about all the things that we discussed today. What kind of data we collect, and what kind of technology standards are needed, and what kind of mutual recognition is needed. All of this is just the approach from the regulation side. However, for a company to export the product, they have to do things naturally. So, because no company wants to welcome a new regulation, but I think things should work out naturally. For example, if there's a new for companies to adopt DPP, maybe large-scale SIs have to be involved. So for IT industries to have to be welcome to these measures, and also remanufacturing and reuse, recycle, remanufacturing companies. We need to see more of those companies. Only then we will see a meaningful change. So how can we support these businesses? And just like Mr. Kim just mentioned, circular economy for textile industries will eventually raise the price of the apparels. Without tax credit, the companies will not be able to implement this new DPP. So we need to build a new market. So industry support policies should be developed by the government. Only then I think we will be able to see meaningful change. So DPP should not be seen as a regulation. It's a measure to it's a growth engine behind the business. I think we should look at it that way. So you said we have to look at it from a different side to see DPP not as a regulation, but is a means to achieve circular economy. So thank you for your insight.
께서는 어떻게 생각하시는지 모르겠습니다. DPP에
So my question to Mr. Scalia, how to incentivize enterprises?
You. Well, technically speaking, if you will sell products, garments in the EU, you don't really need incentives because you have no choice. You have to provide the DPP and you have to comply with performance requirements, period. Otherwise, your product will be illegal. In other world regions, that could be interesting to see what kind of incentives there will be. But now, in the EU and maybe elsewhere, I think the best incentives that can be there, it's a effective and good market surveillance system, also fueled by DPP. I'll give you an example. In the EU and UK, on average, there are 28 billion of garments being imported and exported. 80% is imported. Now, 0.00003 is checked for compliance with chemicals. That means there is not an effective market surveillance system, and it's objectively impossible to do so. More requirements will come. If we have a good system to ensure market surveillance, then that's an incentive. Because I know if I invest in sustainability, and I know my competitors or other companies don't do that, then they will be caught, and free riders will be stopped. I think that's the best incentives. 2 small points. You can incentivize the requirements. For instance, in case of traceability, there is a way to incentivize the data gathering the value chain. I like very much what was said in the previous presentation. There is no good traceability in the textile value chain. If that works, if that is simplified, it is less expensive for SME to exchange data, that's a facilitation, it's a huge one. Last point, recycled content is very difficult. If we want to incentivize and facilitate, we have a way, for instance, with EPR subsidies to support the covering the higher cost. VAT is also a good one, but in Europe it's more difficult. Perhaps in Korea you have better chances. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you very much. 고맙습니다.
Mr. Kim? Just like many people said, there are many different ways to incentivize tax credit, low interest loan. I think financial support will be the biggest incentive. However, before accepting those incentives, businesses need to change. Businesses need to change to transition to DPP and circular economy, and resource and money is needed. So if we target just the EU market, everything is clear. Every timeline is out there. There are goals to that. However, the problem is in Korea. Same industry, same market, but in Korea. Is DPP necessary here? When will we do it? Should we do it? Because there are a lot of uncertainties. Uncertainties cause businesses to fail to make prompt judgments. So how can we use these incentives to build a competitive advantage? Well, it's not clear for them. You have to have a clear certainty for the businesses to make investments and change. And to do that, the relevant government agencies must develop their programs and have a big picture around it to provide more certainty. For example, if a timeline is we will implement DPP in Korea in 5 years, of course there could be slight adjustments to the schedule. However, that kind of plan or timeline has to be out there for companies to change. Because I'm saying this because doing business, the business model have to be very different from the previous paradigm. To do that, a lot of money, resources, people are needed to change. So higher certainty, I think, will be enticing for the businesses to change. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Because in the interest of time, I will maybe accept about 1 to 2 questions from the floor. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. We will deliver the microphone to you. Please raise your hand once again.
Thank you for all this productive panel discussion. I have 2 questions. So, referring to these EU use cases, I'd like to find an answer. DPP encompasses a variety of data points in terms of data batteries, 90 data points, and there is some general information, but there are some confidential information, and some information requires validation. And for companies who are working here in Korea who are exporting, then these companies, when they submit this data to EU, how these data can be checked in terms of conformity or validation. So my question is exactly how this data is to be validated. Because especially for the countries that the data points are coming from outside of EU, is there any different framework or different act will be considered, or do you have any experiences that we can refer to? My second question is, I think Korea is working well, relatively speaking, so that we can create a TPP and ecosystem. If that happens, I think if we have this data space here in the EU and in Korea, if we can consider mutual recognition, can you please share what kind of POC level, POC subject that requires ahead of these mutual recognitions? Thank you.
첫 번째 질문 EU 측에서 답변을 좀.
So I'd like to get the answer from the EU. How, when our Korean companies send the data, then how these data can be validated? I'd like to get an answer from Mr. Ang Lee. Thank you.
Yeah, so each time an information will be required, whether in the DPP or outside, there is always the means of verification, which is defined together with it. It can be verification on the product itself, so depending on the parameter, if it can be tested, for example, on the product, then the market surveillance authorities will test a sampling of product and will require manufacturers to have themselves the same parameter tested before being put on the market. So that's one way. If it cannot be tested on the product itself, then the questions of certification and the cascade of certificates may also be envisaged and required for these parameters. So it depends, in fact, on the parameters or the data entries that are required for the DPP.
고맙습니다. 혹시 첨언하실 분 계실까요?
Anything to add? Anyone?
Yes, please. We'll pass over the mic.
Sorry for interrupting,
it's
because there is a project ongoing exactly for the testing for the batteries. From two perspectives, one is from the content, but as well from the system perspective. Yeah? So this is currently running, just started in April this year. So this project will define some constraints how to test data and system in order to be compliant with the entire regulation at least.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your sincere response. So we just open the floor. If you have any questions or opinions, please raise your hand. 고맙습니다. 이렇게 또 답변을 주셨고. 그러면 두 번째 질문 주신.
For the second question, so the mutual recognition, so pre-approval of before the mutual recognition. I think that was a second question from the the audience, if you remember. Anyone care to answer?
Yeah, so in terms of mutual recognition, first, as was said already, I think, by my neighbor, before going to mutual recognition, you need to assess very closely what are the requirements in each side, if the requirements are compatible, are on the same parameters, how they are calculated, verified in each side, and what could be the object of this mutual recognition. And once you have this technical work done, then the means of negotiating mutual recognition exists through the free trade agreements. So the framework exists, but the technical work has to be done and be done correctly in order to go to them.
제가 좀 더 보태면
I would like to add one point. So legal framework in Korea is very different. For example, think about the waste categorization. We have completely different criteria and legal framework in Korea, in EU. But to pursue mutual recognition based on that difference, it's impossible because our legal framework is decoupled. That's where we have to start. However, for an exporting company, it's a product made here and sent to there. You have to satisfy or comply the local legal framework from the design until the end of the waste disposal. The local laws will be applied to this product. However, we have all of these different products in decoupled markets. Maybe POC projects, if there POC projects will be good opportunities for us to recognize the differences. So mutually, we will understand our differences. That could be a starting point. As just like I said earlier, mutual. For example, if there is a legal framework and system in Korea and recycled materials ratio is almost same or almost similar to that level of EU, I think that's the first goal, and we can move on from there. Maybe the auditors will be trained, we will train them, and maybe in the end, mutual recognition and even more mutual authentication will be possible. Authentication will be the final step. And to do that, we need a lot of experience and a lot of practice, and data integrity has to be verified. We have to have that as a premise to achieve mutual recognition as well as mutual authentication.
Go back to the first question. I think it's a very, very valid point, and it's still an open question. I fully agree. Pierre already explained that testing is an avenue. But in some cases, you cannot test, for instance, the presence of recycled content. It cannot be tested with legal certainty. The business use practices like chain of custody, so you trace back information in the value chain. And so we need a system of data exchange which is safe, which avoids alteration in the process. So all the data transfer in the traceability system, which also lends to the DPP, has to be verifiable, has to be sure. So that's partially also an IT questions, but it's still an open question because we have seen, so for instance, in some member states in France, they have the concept of bonuses if you use recycled content, but they have not figured out how to legally ensure the verification, and that has been undermining very much the use. So the whole point is, in principle, we have solution. Testing is one, chain of custody is the other one. But we need to find a robust way how to ensure that the information passing the value chain will be verifiable and will be tracked back to the source. As today, we are still not there.
Thank you very much for your answer. 네, 시간이 좀 많이 지났는데.
Well, in the interest of time, but we have one person who has to ask this question, so we will entertain just one more. Because we are running out of time. So I want to ask just one question. So eco-design regulation. Well, eco-design, when we talk about eco-design, design is the design process. So we have to comply with the regulation from the design phase. Today's discussion was focused on DPP. However, the eco-design regulation for different products, I think what's happening in EU, I want to know more about that because reusability, recyclability. We're talking about ability, whether it is possible to reuse, whether it is possible to repair. Those are very future aspect of the product. Rather than focusing on the manufacturing of the product, how to discard that product when after its life cycle has ended, how can we recycle them, how can we reuse them? Because the EU countries, I don't think all of those countries have very homogeneous recycling framework in those countries. Even though those are EU countries, they might have different systems. But how can you have a singular framework for example, recycling and reusing? How do you harmonize different environment and opinions? What's your priority in harmonizing these differences among European countries? So in circular economy, discarding waste is very important part. So how those aspects are being discussed in the EU. So maybe the panelists could answer to that question.
Yeah, so you're fully right that indeed there are important differences between EU member states, including on recycling, and recycling capacities are not the same. Precisely within the EU, what is the same is product regulations. So when a product is regulated at EU level, this regulation applies throughout the EU and within each member state. So it's a way to harmonize the system, but through the product requirements. Which means that indeed, for example, when we go to recycled content, the requirement will be the same, but the recycled material will not be available in the same way or will not necessarily follow the same process. And that's where indeed the requirements on the materials, quality requirements and verification of this quality are important aspects and need to be taken into account in the requirement as well.
Maybe I can try to complement on two very interesting aspects that you raise. Reusability, for instance. There could be different ways, and I think the benefit of this legislation is that it will harmonize what we mean by that. We think that higher quality is already the first condition for reusability. To use something again and again, it has to be durable, and that's something you can measure. Also, you need perhaps good instruction to care and maintenance of the product. So if you inform the consumer properly on how to treat properly a product, that also can increase the lifetime. So these are some ideas, some of the proposal of Eurotex as well, there could be others, but this law will clarify that. Recyclability, I think it's a tricky one, because we see how technology is evolving very, very fast. So what is maybe not recyclable today, it can be recycled in 6 months or 1 year if you have the right condition. So that perhaps it's something more difficult to freeze in legislation, because legislation is slow with the technology, or depends by the point of view. So I think the good thing is that this legislation will set the same criteria across the whole EU member states, and hopefully it can also inspire other world regions in going the same direction.
고맙습니다. 네.
Thank you. So thank you to the panelists for sharing your insights until this very end. Of course, we needed more time to discuss further. However, I think it was a very productive session for all of us. Please give the 4 panelists a big round of applause once again. Please please return to your seats.
Much once again. 고맙습니다. 그리고 오늘 또 참가자 여러분들께서 또
Thank you, all the participants, for a very engaging participants. Thank you so much. We were able to discuss so much on circular economy and DPP. I hope that today's discussion could be a stepping stone to achieve the goal of circular economy. From the early morning, from the opening ceremony until the end of the forum, thank you so much for staying with us. We have a survey for you for a better forum in the future. So please scan the QR code on the screen and participate in the survey. And tomorrow on the rooms 501 and 502, we have electronics and textile and battery sector sessions. The leading companies will be sharing their circular economy strategies and response. So if you are interested, please join us. And those of you who will be joining us at the welcome dinner, please come to the Mercure Hotel and follow the instructions to the venue. With this, I would like to close today's event. Thank you so much.